Poland is often described.
Did the rebels use in that
hold
war?
Up. Hold
Colorado doesn't want an election.
I'm telling no. You're missing the point. I'm saying going back, the potential disagreement if Zelensky's okay with some kind of land deal,
this debate thing.
the Verkhovna Rada does not approve it under their constitution, right? And so in that event,
So jest Verkhovna Rada nad Verkhovna Rada.
if Zelensky had an election, would that potentially change the scenario on the ground? I think one thing that it would do is it would give the Russians some level of reassurance that like a potential avenue for trying to disclaim the results of the treaty later on is going to be closed.
The Wick panel.
Right? Because I could see the argument coming up, which is like, currently Zelensky's in power in blatant disregard of their constitution. The election commission, whatever rule they want to promulgate, doesn't take precedence over the constitution of Ukraine, which is listed as the supreme law of the land. And the supreme law of the land has I think Article 83 has a specific clause that allows the terms of parliamentarians to be extended during martial law. But it's very specifically 84, sure. 83.
No, paragraph 4
84.
of section 83, Article 83, paragraph 4. But go ahead.
Okay, so I was right. So there is a specific, but it specifically does not mention the president, right? And so then the question arises, well, is there
the election code
that gives the president this ability? There's not.
Not in
and
the Constitution.
The fact,
it is in the Electoral Commission, though.
But the Electoral Commission, their rulings. This is like con law like 101. In the U.S., if Congress passes a law, it can't go over the Constitution. The Constitution, it's Article I think 101. I could be wrong. It's in the early hundreds. Specifies that the president will serve a term of 5 years. That is the term. And so the fact
the election code does specify
is
it.
in blatant disregard of their own constitution. Now the Russians are maybe concerned that let's say that happens. Let's say they come to some kind of deal and with Zelensky. Well, later on down the road, Ukraine doesn't like the deal anymore, and they say, well, actually, that deal was made with an illegitimate president. We can't abide by that deal. That's not we can only abide by
Section 3, the electoral process
elected in our government. Well, now what? I mean, technically they're right, but at the time, the Ukrainians, government was refusing to have an election. So what do? I don't know.
So
what you could do really is like just stop this fucking weird pretense of just being the first war ever where anyone has thought there's like a serious concern about a country not having elections while they're being invaded. Like no one has ever made this complaint. No one ever. I mean, I've heard a few people say like Hitler had more democratic mandate than Churchill, I guess, because Churchill never had an election before he became prime minister in World War II, and there were no elections until the war ended. But mostly those people are kind of like arguing in bad faith. I don't understand what this both sides is between Zelensky and Putin, who literally has to deal with fucking nationwide protests about electoral fraud when he wins elections, who had to change his own constitution in Russia to keep running for president. What is this? What are we doing?
So you can act incredulous all you want. But that was done legally, firstly. You might dislike it. You might dislike the fact that Putin, like by Western
Lactoid is worse than
85% approval rating or something crazy like that. He is overwhelmingly popular.
Lactoid is very dishonest and slimy.
And he did have elections in accordance with the Constitution and won. Now, you can point to other specific things and say, well, like Russia does this worse. And I can point to certain things. Ukraine does this worse. It's not just the election. It's also the language bans. It's also the religion bans.
The language bans is worse?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Let's oh god.
Hold on. There is no.
Like, give me a second. Wick, I gotta.
Can I?
You said we got to get back to the main topic. But if we go off on this, because this is important, if he says this,
that's
we have
why
enough
I'm
time
allowing
to
this.
catch back up.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I just wanted to make sure we had enough time.
You
What a
can.
joke.
You can, if he says something, or either any
That's
of you,
fair.
if any of you say something that the other person feels a need that they have to respond to, we'll allow it because
No.
so much of this is
Russian is still
interconnected.
widely spoken in Ukraine. Trust me, I know. I go there
will
pretty
just say
often.
this,
And
the
I hear
question
Russian
want
a
to
lot.
ask is like, what position or what role should the American government be playing in the negotiations here, regardless of what we think is going to happen? So I want you to keep that in your mind, but I'll allow it for the sake of the discussion. Finish up what you were saying, Lactoid, and then I'll let Dylan and Loner respond, and we can figure it out. Go ahead.
Sure. So not only, and when I refer to
talking
language,
about
Russia
language
just
bans, frankly,
burns
so-
yeah,
books.
well, because they're going to be responsive to this. Sure. I was
What a
having a
joke.
grand old time watching a Lonerbox video earlier before this debate, and Lonerbox agreed that the 2019 language law was pretty bad. He conceded that was pretty bad. I hope that's still his opinion. Since then, that was of course before the invasion. Since then, it's
Whereas
only
it
gotten
wasn't
worse.
a language ban. It's not actually a language ban.
Well, you know,
though, is
you
it?
didn't call it a ban. You called it a language. That's why I said language law, in which it specifically prioritizes Ukrainian, and it puts Ukrainian restrictions on media that a certain percentage has to be in Ukrainian.
Yeah,
and
it's
that certain
called
minority languages
it's
are
called
protected, with
reversing
the, notable
Russification.
exception of Russian,
I've had
despite
a
the
whole
fact that
discussion.
Russian is a widely spoken minority language in Ukraine, and the bans really started coming into effect after the war. I agree with that. But it's really gotten worse since the 2019 language law. When now you're seeing, like in Kiev, for example, when they're banning a Russian cultural language product, books, they're banning books that are in Russian, and they're banning like I forget if Russian Orthodox Church or the Orthodox Church in Russia. I know one of them is sanctioned by the Ukrainian government, the other one's not. The canonical one's not, and so they are banned. Right, a certain religion. I mean, very similar to like if we were to ban some kind of sect of the Catholic Church in America, pretty, I think, horrific. And you can say like, well, this is no big deal. But I think if we're going to make appeals to like things like ethnic cleansing or like cultural destruction, I think that like restricting language and religion and culture is a problem. And those laws, at least on the books,
What a joke.
are not present in Russia. They're simply not, and they
Because
are
they
present
don't
in
need
Ukraine.
to be. Like again, because I guess what you missed out from my
Because
video
they
is that
need
also
to
the
be in
human,
Ukraine.
yes, and you should have noticed if you watched my video that European human rights bodies agreed that there was
Yes,
there was justification.
you're
for
correct.
Ukraine,
They were
even though there were issues
directly
with the
affiliated.
specifics of the law.
Yeah.
That there was a justification
Correct.
for this country that has been under the thumb of Russian imperialism for over 300 years, where they have actually had.
This is where the dishonesty enters, by the way. Ukraine has been Russified by Russia, and Ukraine reversing the policies of Russification is not cultural genocide or the destruction of culture.
People who speak the Russian language like feeling sidelined, even if it's just the case that like they have to dub certain media in Ukrainian, or if you print a Russian newspaper, you got to print it in Ukrainian alongside it. I don't. Yeah, do you disagree that there's a principle there that Russia doesn't really have to deal with for the same reason?
I disagree with the principle generally. Like, I think that whether or not Russia has to deal with it, which I'm not necessarily sure is the case, because Russia does have large groups of ethnic minorities, especially like in the South Caucasus.
What a joke.
And these areas generally have like rights to speak
Yeah.
their language.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Like,
so
trust
I don't
me,
think that you're
but-
saying that, like,
It's not
oh,
about having minorities in the country. It's about the fact
Like,
that
it's
you
like
are
saying
literally just
that
cutting out
reversing the
hundreds of
extinction of the
years.
Belarusian
Well, that was the
language in
se- that was-
Belarus would
that was
be
the second point I'm
cultural
making.
genocide of
first
the
point
Russians.
is like, well, Russia doesn't have to, like, Russia's not in the same situation. I think on one hand they are, because there are like large groups of minorities that have like independent cultures and unique cultures, and those languages aren't banned in the same way. But then when you're talking about like the sort of, and I'm going to use this word directly because this is really what I think your argument hinges on, this sort of like land back reparations mentality of like, well, for hundreds of years, we were unfairly treated, which I'm not going to deny, right? Stalin was evil. For hundreds of years, we were unfairly treated.
What a joke.
So now we're going to unfairly treat them, right? Now we're going to get back at them, and now we're going to oppress their culture so we can reinvigorate ours because the Ukrainian blood is tied to the Ukrainian soil. That's really concerning.
No,
I think
that's not
where
how that
claims
works.
of like fascism come, because I mean, this is a lot of the sort of mentality, which is like, well, we have to bring up a resurgence of our culture, even if that involves stomping on the cultural rights of
prioritizing one language over the other is not stamping anything,
Russian,
by the way.
Who now
It's a dishonest language.
They can't buy Russian books. They can't listen to Russian music in public. Then they're Ukrainian citizens that speak Russian.
Again,
what about them?
Conflating pre-2022 invasion and after is kind of thing I want to maybe avoid here, because first of all,
I thought it was very
I'll give you one example then. Do you think that if they said that civil servants have to answer the phone in Ukrainian, but they can switch to Russian if the caller wants to, is that repressing Russians?
I mean, that specific one, they have to answer in Ukrainian, but they can switch if the caller wants to.
Yeah.
I mean, if it might be like a slight repression
No,
if like the call is
that's
coming
bullshit.
from like
I'm sorry, that's stupid.
Russian-speaking area, and that's obvious. But it would be like a pretty slight repression.
No, it would not be. It would be like saying that
when a
if
lot of
you
countries have either overcome imperialism or have not even done that. You can say like France, like when nations form, like the idea of coalescing around a national identity and promoting a national language is not really that unusual. That's why some of these laws, which you call slight repressions, were not seen as slight repressions by the Europeans. There were some measures that were seen as
that is complete nonsense. It's like saying that if you answer first in English in the US, then you're repressing all the other languages.
You did say language ban earlier. That's why.
But no. You can roll back. What I said was the 2019 language law. I did not call it a ban prior to the war. And then I very specifically said, yes, it's true that the bans really started coming after the 2022 invasion. I was very clear about that. Yes, the bans, the actual like criminal enforcement of these, of restricting people from having, books and speaking and music and all these things, that started coming in 2022 and 2023. I'm not saying that happened before the 2022 invasion, but you still see like a sort of, again, like prioritization of like Ukrainian identity, which of course is going to be unpopular again amongst the separatists in the East, like in the DPR and LPR. I mean, what kind of messages to send to them of like, oh, we want to bring you back into this country by force, by the way. Oh, and by the way, we also passed this law in which the language that you speak at home is no longer, going to be favored in your area. It's no longer going to be the language of your community.
Favored.
I think that's
no longer favored.
Give it to
wait, why was it favored?
But then Dylan had some things to say on it that he wanted to tackle as well. So go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to do just before we forget about it. Going back to first of all, there were Russian regular soldiers in Ukraine, even from 2014.
Yeah, of course, it was reported on. You can find those reports on YouTube now.
The Russians took back like 150 coffins of their own soldiers who were fighting right from the get-go. So that's just, there were actually regular fighters there as well. It wasn't just advisors. Second of all, when you were talking about Minsk and both sides violating by not withdrawing their forces from either side, do you think this is an equivalent? The fact, bearing in mind, Russia didn't even admit that they had soldiers in the country. So they were like, well, how? Yeah, we agree to this, but we're not going to take anyone out because we don't have anyone in there. Like, do you think these are equal violations? The Americans and Russians not pulling out of Ukraine and Minsk too?
Well, part of the issue is I don't actually know, and you don't.
Oh, of course.
I mean, you mentioned, I guess, some story about 150 coffins. I don't know where that comes from.
From a Russian opposition politician.
Okay, all right. So sure. So some politician said that. Even if that is the case, which I'm skeptical of, but even if that is the case, I mean, you can't tell me what percentage that is of the total fighters. You can't tell me what amount of equipment was being sent by Russia into the DPR and LPR. And you also can't tell me what type of equipment or how much equipment.
So now we moved, there were no Russian soldiers to what percentage?
I don't know on subsection 10.
We can broadly.
Wait, yeah, sorry. No, I'm not.
What do you mean?
Hang on, you're not getting away with
that. Absolutely.
You're not getting away with that. I also can't tell you how many Wehrmacht tanks were in Poland. I can still say they should withdraw. And if they said, oh, well, we should get allies out the other side if there are any there, then that's not. I'm asking you if you think it's an equal violation for Russia, the force that's in there, even if they have 100 soldiers or 150 or 200 or 3,000, versus Americans who are helping Ukraine that has
What the hell is
forces
this?
in their country.
You don't know how much of a percentage.
I
Do you think these are equal violations when Russia's not even admitting they have soldiers there?
Okay, I think you missed. Well, maybe you misunderstood what I was saying.
Yeah,
my answer was
it happens
I don't
a lot
know
when you're
the
dishonest.
gravity of the violation of subsection 10, because I don't know the full extent of involvement, and you don't either, of either side when it comes to the involvement of Russia and the DPR and America in Ukraine generally. Now, I agree that both sides were absolutely involved.
Right.
When Russia says like, "Oh, we have nothing there," I mean that's
Yeah.
not true, right? There's obviously going to be Russian equipment there.
Oh, hello, boy meets me.
Advisors and all sorts of stuff,
Yeah.
and same thing vice
Special
versa.
forces.
You're gonna have, Western equipment, which again, all of this violates subsection 10. When you are asking me, well, what's a clear, like, which side is like more clearly violating this? I don't know. But what I do
By the way,
know,
very funny. I seen
now
very
we've
funny
established that subsection 10,
I
at
don't
least in
know
my opinion, I don't know
documentary
who's violating
reports
more,
from
but both sides are
2014 was
violating.
when soldiers
What I
said
do know
we can see all
is
the
that
Western
when
equipment
you
on
have an
TV,
area,
but we don't see it here. We must
where
use
the
Soviet
people
equipment.
there want self-determination, they want to be autonomous. There's only one side that's violating them in this case, and that's Ukraine. So you keep referring to it as like the foreign entity coming in to our country. No,
Yeah,
you
Donetsk and
surrendered your
Luhansk
legitimacy
clearly
over
wanted
the
to be
LPR and
independent.
DPR,
That's
a
why
bigger country,
millions of people
when
from
you
there became
coup your president.
displaced because
It's
they
over.
all
You
wanted to
don't
be
get to
just
claim
part
those
of
areas
this
anymore.
separate place, right?
What? According to what
Okay.
rules? What are you talking about? First, okay, wait, hang on. There again. So I'm not talking about numbers. I'm talking about the fact that, as far as I know, I don't know if American soldiers were like in battles and dying.
No.
In any report.
I don't know.
The
I don't
answer
know
is
either.
no. The answer is
No.
Are you
no.
pretending that
The
we've
answer
been,
is
like,
absolutely
No,
not.
we weren't.
hiding 100 dead soldiers?
was
I don't
not
know if
that good.
mercenaries
What
were
are you
there. I
talking
don't know.
about?
I don't know if mercenaries were there, and that's also covered under subsection 10.
Okay, let's say there were 10 times more Americans, but Putin is the one saying, we don't even have any soldiers there. Sorry. Then he admits it a year later that they actually did.
Sure, that's a lie.
Okay.
How do you negotiate with someone who
qualitatively,
won't even
I'm
agree?
not
He's
asking
doing
you-
the thing he agreed not to do. How do you even
That's the
begin
thing,
to
I'm not-
negotiate with that person?
I'm not asking you quantitatively. I'm asking you qualitatively which violation is worse. Russia has no right to be there with soldiers who are getting involved in battles to help a secessionist movement.
Well, when you say no right, I think they have a moral right to do that. Firstly, so I guess it depends what you mean by right.
Just like in
and
Georgia,
in terms of, let's say, 10
just
times
like
more
in,
Americans were there, I don't think that subsection 10's violation is
What a
dependent
joke.
on whether or not the foreign head of state lies or not about troops or mercenaries being in those areas. The only thing that subsection 10 talks about is mercenaries, foreign equipment, and foreign militaries being in these areas. That's all subsection 10 is referring to. So if you're saying, well, look, Putin wasn't fully honest.
why is it
in the
that
fact that he totally
all
fucking lied
of Russia's
about,
neighbors
like,
want
what kind
to
of assets that he was
secede
sending
their
into,
own little
the LPR and DPR?
independent regions like
The answer to
Transnistria,
that is,
like
sure,
in
he was
Georgia?
lying, and
Russia
what does that have to do with
magically just
subsection 10?
happens
The
to
fact
be
that he
there
was lying,
to
what does the
help.
fact that he was lying have to do
Well, that means
with
the
subsection 10?
negotiations were doomed from the start because he was never going to engage in good faith and actually pull them out because he never was interested.
The Ukrainians never pulled out any of their foreign weaponry.
Wait,
They never even tried.
Okay, wait, no, okay, let's do this. You're the Ukrainians.
Did they?
Right? You're engaging in good faith as the Ukrainians. Let's just do this for 30-second exercise. You're engaging in good faith. You really want to end the war, and we just signed Minsk II. We're talking about Article 10. I'm the Russians. Come to me, and let's do this. Let's get each other to cooperate, because only if I cooperate will you cooperate, right? If I follow everything and you follow nothing, then I won't, then obviously that's a problem. So let's try that.
Yeah, I would take all of the foreign weaponry that I received and start to move it like away and try to get it to leave the country. And
Fantastic.
if I see,
when you have the other side not even acknowledging that their troops are still there in the front line.
yeah. If I see, like, on the other side, like, I'm not seeing some kind of concurrent movement based on my intelligence, then I might start to accuse them of saying, hey, you said you were going to pull this shit out and you didn't, and then try to make some kind of diplomatic situation about it. But of course, but of course, no, they didn't make any effort.
They did say that they have their soldiers there, so we're not going to withdraw. That's what
did they make. Did the Ukrainians make any effort to withdraw the foreign weaponry?
Knowing that they wouldn't.
Wait.
Can I finish a sentence, please?
Brilliant.
Did the Ukrainians make any effort to pull the foreign weaponry that they received from the West out of the country, but prior to refusing elections in the DPR and LPR?
Yeah, probably not. Probably not, because they had Russian soldiers who were on the other side who weren't leaving and weren't even acknowledging that they were there. Yeah, of course. It's not like, I don't know what this childish interpretation is where like, you've got like a conflict ongoing and a front line and you're just like, oh, well, we're just going to lower all our defenses and fuck off and just be like, listen, I hope you guys do the same thing. Like that's not practical.
True.
It's not a practical thing to do.
Yeah. So can I respond to that? Not all of their forces were mercenaries or foreign supplied military equipment. They had like indigenous military equipment and soldiers.
Indigenous
as well, so they would
what?
have to pull back everything.
Indigenous military equipment.
But your argument could work for the other side as well, right? The DPR and LPR.
Like it's indigenous military equipment.
Of all their foreign, Western military equipment. Well, then why the fuck should we? Why should
You're
we
talking about
send
the Russians,
like,
not the people, not the average Ukrainian
well,
of DPR and LPR.
Well, I know that you would prefer that to be the case, but the reality is, like the people from the polls, the people in the DPR and the LPR,
that, but you're full
wanted, they wanted autonomy, not a Russian force to take them to take the territory back from them.
I don't want to swing over it because we have so many things to cover.
Minsk 2 guaranteed autonomy and local elections in those areas, and when they tried to have those local elections,
again,
who stopped them?
With millions of internally displaced people.
Okay, so there are people.
How do you have those elections?
Independence referendum. Does that mean a foreign force can come in there with mercenaries to help them secede?
In the event that the Spanish government is illegally couped, the people of Catalonia should be able to declare independence, and they should be able to get support from a foreign entity. Yes.
Well, in this case,
in the same way,
the Spanish government has just gotten rid of the French puppet leader who is breaking like every promise that he's made to the entire population, and then using police officers to fire on protesters who oppose him. Yeah, that's happening. And then the French are going to come in to save Catalonia afterwards.
So I'm going to do two things.
Fuck me.
I'm sure you created this fucking straw man, and now you're just like
complete straw man.
And now you're acting like you just won something. Okay, I'm going to address everything you just said because it's completely false, as in terms of an allegory to what's going on or what happened in Ukraine during Euromaidan. Can I please, Wick?
Yeah, finish. But
yes,
there's so much.
Wick has zero control over his own
thing. It is the course of the conversation. It is the course of the conversation. So I think, yes. So to answer the question that you asked me directly, yes, if the Spanish government gets unconstitutionally couped, Catalonia should be able to declare independence. And I would also say that this could also happen if a area of a country is like sufficiently disenfranchised. So America, we declared independence from the UK and we got help from the French and the Spanish to do so. And I think that was fine because the UK denied us representation in their parliament. Now when you say you mischaracterize Euromaidan as well, this is because the puppet president, of course, that was democratically elected.
2 million fled.
That election was overseen by
2
thousands
million
of international observers, and even the OSCE recognizes that was a free and fair election in which Yanukovych won. Nobody serious denies that, even on the Ukraine side these days. We're talking about that's true, and we're talking about
you're just going on. It's not important.
Yeah, he willingly used the consent of the people to go against a trade deal that had support from the overwhelming majority of the parliament. Yeah.
Here's the problem. Like, you're saying such horseshit, and then it takes like a long time to disprove your horseshit, and then I go on too long, and Wick stops me.
I've let you go a lot. Okay.
Well, I know, but the problem is the truth is often complicated, and when you just spew shit. It's like it doesn't really. It's hard. It's difficult. I won't be able to disprove this shit. I won't be able to talk about the length of the Euromaidan riots and the cops that were killed and the occupation of public buildings. I also won't be able to talk about the tripartite trade agreement that was proposed by Ukraine. That was
triple complicated, but Russia is good. I know.
I won't be able to substantially debunk all of this bullshit in the length of time that we have on this panel. And that's just
it's all bullshit.
Reality of, I guess, political debating. But Lonerbox is mischaracterizing the Euromaidan coup. The insurrectionists were not these sort of helpless victims. This is not what happened.
Insurrectionists.
There are so many potential places to go from here. I do want to give it to Dylan for a moment.
What a joke.
Sure. I'm going to try to blow through these things because I'm sure Wick, I can see it in his eyes from retired.
Yeah, Euromaidan was an oppressive insurgency, just like the Solidarity movement was in Poland. Didn't you know?
So first thing is, I would say talking about the Minsk II failing and the Russians like, well, what troops? I don't know. Just pull out your troops, but we don't have troops to pull out. And whether or not if the Ukrainians pulled out while the Russians were denying they even had troops there in the first place, if the Russians would have said, hey, I guess we do have troops there and we are going to withdraw, whether they would have come out and do that. But ever since they invaded in 2022, the Russians have continued with the same demand. We want an army. We want a massive army. We want a massive army inside Ukraine, and you shouldn't have one. They want Ukraine to demilitarize. They made the demand at 3 weeks.
This man is a professional Russian propagandist. Hope he gets paid for this shit. I know. Very dishonest and slimy person.
To get the Ukrainians to have less Western equipment,
disgusting,
less guns, bombs, tanks generally, while they get to maintain theirs by either denying they have it in the first place or just questioning the idea of them having to limit anything they have is ridiculous. So I would just say that maybe back in 2014, we could have lived in ambiguity, but we live in today in 2025, and we can see what the Russians have demanded since then, and that has continued Ukrainian demilitarization while they don't have to give anything up. Also, as for like the legitimacy of like if Zelensky had an election right now, and Churchill had, if he was to do this right now, that could undermine the Russian claim of illegitimacy and stop a way that they could reignite the war. The Russians claimed that the Ukrainians had biological research laboratories that were going to target the DNA of Russians. They've claimed that Satanist trans people is doing X, Y, and Z.
Like me.
They claim that the Ukrainians did the Moscow Mall
I'm the
attack.
Satanist trans person.
The Ukrainians invaded them in 2022.
True.
And actually, that's why they invaded, and they released footage of Russian soldiers in Ukrainian garb crossing the border in territory that only the Russians could have occupied. So
it reminds me of Poland in 1939.
Got the drop on them, like that. Just it isn't really. So I don't think that the Russians are going to need to be like, oh, we would invade Ukraine, but now Zelensky had an election. He seems so legitimate. I don't think that that's really going to be a significant factor. As for the language bans, in occupied territory, people are heard speaking Ukrainian. They see it as an insult, they see them as a potential threat, and they're disappeared. They're disappeared, and they can be tortured. They can be tortured. They can be sexually abused in these places. They can be beaten in these places very severely.
In occupied territory,
Russian-speaking Ukrainian military units. I meet people on the front line serving in the Ukrainian armed forces who are speaking Russian. I like my main fixer in Ukraine, who's from displaced person, refugee from the Donetsk. He speaks Russian all the time.
I hear Russian every day on the street.
I look at some of these like language restrictions of the books published. This percentage has to be Ukrainian and XYZ. And to me, as an American, when we don't have a state-enforced language, it seems pretty silly.
Well, now you have. Trump created one.
Struggle, and the Russians deny Ukrainians really exist as anything else.
We do have a state language. Trump established English as one.
Assert its culture, as Russia has historically, in its past during the Russian Tsardom, banned it and are punishing people for practicing it. People get arrested for singing Ukrainian music, XYZ, happens all the time. So the idea that the Ukrainians are worse when it comes to the language ban, because when you walk into Ukrainian public building, they speak to you first in Ukrainian in the country of Ukraine, I think it's a little ridiculous. As for the church ban, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, which didn't seem to know which church was which, but we're going to be talking about the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, not the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. We're talking about that's the Russian. We're going to say the Russian version, Ukrainian version. That's simplifying it, but I'm just to get around it.
Yeah.
The head of that church, Kirill, said if you go to Ukraine and you kill Ukrainians, you go to heaven. Tons of these pastors have been used as spies, as informants. The Russians have used the Russian Orthodox Church.
And it's public record, by the way, the whole head of Russian church saying that you go to heaven if you kill Ukrainian. It's not some secret. He said it officially in the media. It's public record.
So the Ukrainians felt that it was of a national security priority to support the Orthodox Church of Ukraine and to make it so that they had an entity that was not religiously dominant in the country, that is controlled, like this specific Russian Orthodox Church that's controlled by Russia. So I understand that, maybe in the United States, people are uncomfortable with the idea of any like sect or any specific church being shut down, but Ukraine was being invaded. And the way they wrote the ban is if you're invading us, if a country's invading us and a religious organization is based out of the capital of that country, then it cannot operate in Ukraine. Meaning that if Russia was to stop invading tomorrow, the Russian Orthodox Church would be unbanned overnight by the letter of the law on what is in Ukraine. So I don't think comparing that to an occupied territory where you're not allowed to operate a Protestant church, you're not allowed to operate Baptist churches. There was 40 Protestant churches in Metropole before the Russians took over. There's now none. I visited a lot of these churches that have been bombed. There was Pentecostals that were lynched in the
He remembers his own documentary
back in 2014, 2015. This is not a new trend, whether it was done by the Russian Orthodox Army or other far-right goons. So the idea that Ukraine is worse than Russia
is a joke.
when Russia is cracking down heavily on these religious minorities and willing to use their religious entity as a weapon, therefore bringing it under their scrutiny that you're now criticizing it. I don't think those are good ways to say that, see, Ukraine in some ways are worse than Russia,
Okay.
even if I have personal disagreements with parts of that. There's other stuff I could talk about, like him saying like the majority of people in Donetsk want to be part of Russia or want to be part of the.
Yeah, that's why millions are displaced now.
That's, in my experience, it isn't true. Now, maybe, he has a different experience than mine. And obviously I know that Wick wants to get back to the main topic. So for now, we'll put that on the shelf and we'll revisit it later.
I can address the things that are said, right, Wick?
No. Wick should say no.
Okay, I'm just gonna throw a flag on the play, okay, because we have to talk about something
What the
other
fuck?
than the rehash of the same arguments that we've had since the war started.
Well, then let me just respond, and then we can be done. I won't bring up any other
and
points.
then-
I will
And then
just
I
address the
promise
points that were made.
I'll respond after.
I hold on. I will not bring up any. I specifically will talk about
I
the
will.
language ban, church
I
ban,
absolutely will
and
bring up that.
the allegations of. In fact, I'll end on the allegations of Russia and then tie it back to the topic at hand.
I'll
if
bring
that
up the
works.
kidnapping children.
I'll tell you what,
I
you can do
promise.
that, Lactoid, if you
Yes,
remember the
please
question I asked you
do.
to keep in mind.
I totally fucking forgot the question. you
That's
asked me to keep in mind.
why we have to get back to
Okay,
the
so
topic.
I'm gonna wait. Let me just like here. I will bring it back to the topic. I swear. So
What the fuck?
very briefly, I think it's again disingenuous to say like, oh, what's happening in Russian occupied areas, Donbass and Crimea and these areas. It's I know of these people that are disappeared or beaten, or there's these things that are happening. And so like this is much worse than the language bans that are happening in Ukraine. I'm obviously highly skeptical of just some sort of like anecdotal proposal of saying, hey, like I've heard it's worse over there. When
It's not
we
anecdotal
know,
proposals. There's
It's-
tons of investigation.
when
What
we
the
know-
fuck? It's public.
I'm not
know-
just saying that I saw it myself. I'm not
What the
everywhere.
fuck?
sure, when we
It's
know
documented.
that it is on the books,
What
the
do you
law
mean?
in Ukraine, and it's not in Russia.
How, just
It is-
for my
it is on-
edification, hold on, Lactoid, just for my edification, how many people have
What?
been arrested for speaking Russian in Ukraine?
So I've looked into that. It's
Uh-oh.
hard because a lot of the information
Uh-oh.
coming out of Ukraine is censored right now.
Uh-huh.
But I think it's like over one article I saw was like over
Wow.
60 have been criminally charged with it. But that was like pretty early on. Like this was like a couple months after the
Mhm.
ban's initiation. And a lot of this information is just not going to get out. A lot of this information is not going to be published.
So you have
So-
no
because,
data.
Because
No.
because
So it could be zero. The number could be zero.
Well, no, it's not going to be zero. It's going to be
Well,
more
how do you
than
know it's
zero.
not going to be zero?
Because we have early articles
They show that a
indicating that
couple were criminally charged, but I asked how many people have been arrested.
we have early
Wick is
reports,
outsmarting
before
Lactoid,
Zelensky
and
signed
it's
his
painful
media
to
ban,
see.
right? In which the government now very strictly controls the media coming.
So I
from
have no
Ukraine.
data. You have no evidence.
That
It actually
did
could be
indicate that there were
zero.
People being punished under these bans. Now I
Oh my
agree
God.
that since Zelensky signed the media
In what way
ban,
do they
that-
control
that-
the media, by the
I-
way?
So Zelensky signed a media ban. I can bring up the details. Zelensky signed a media ban that was condemned by affiliates of the EU as being very
Yeah,
authoritarian.
I'm familiar. What did it do?
Yeah, I'll bring up the full
I
details.
just-
my understanding. My
Okay.
understanding. Stop saying okay like you got some kind of win. My understanding
it's
is
not
that
a win.
my
I'm just-
my
It's not a win, you
no,
just
but
don't
you
know.
What it is.
No, I do. I know generally that it allows
Like,
the
I
government.
disagree with it
I
too, but
allows-
you should know
oh,
what it is.
I know that generally it allows
my
the
goodness.
government to control what kind of media, or every media company has to be registered with the state in order to function within the country of Ukraine, and the government can pull the permission for any media company operating in Ukraine. That is generally what it does. There might be some extra specifics that have to go into that, but I think that is a sufficient understanding to condemn it.
And
There is
to,
a- I
to
have a
be
sufficient-
clear,
I have
the
a-
reason
I have a sufficient.
yeah, the reason I'm interrupting you, Lactoid, is because I do want to get, and I did tell you I want to get back to the main topic.
And I
right?
said I was going to get to
People
there,
Google
but I mean,
how they
but
use the law.
Dylan went on a long rant, and I totally let him do it.
You
I
went
was
on a
quiet.
long rant first.
And then I let him, and then I let him, and now when I respond, now you're cutting me off.
You went on a long rant. He went on a long rant.
Well, we can't. You can't like, but you can't. But he makes a point, and then I don't answer within 2 seconds, and then I proceed within 4 seconds to give a full answer. You can't.
Wick is not a good moderator.
It's like I'm dumb. When in reality, I very accurately described.
He should not have
media ban, which is that media
allowed this at all.
registered with the government, and they
He should have kept it to topic.
at their own whim. That's fine.
Wick is not a good
the church
host.
ban. You seem to be more just justifying it as opposed to denying it. I disagree that it's justified at all. I don't think that you get to ban a religion.
At what point?
Just because
wait, you say they didn't ban a religion? They didn't do that. They banned a church.
Hold on. Yes, this would be very similar to if the Pope, and by the way, the Pope condemned this law. It'd be similar if the Pope, like, let's say there's some war between the U.S. and some Catholic country, and the Pope was like, "Oh, like America's in the bad. You shouldn't do that." And then our response is to start banning Catholic churches because
since when is the U.S. a Catholic country?
I just disagree. That's fucked.
Was invading and occupying 1/3 of the United States. The Pope said that if you go to America and you kill Americans, you go to heaven. And then he used Catholic churches in the United States to spy on Americans. And there was also separate Catholic churches you could go to anyway. And the situation would be vastly different.
So no, okay.
No.
The example that I gave was not the Vatican invading, because again, the Vatican.
I'm not even saying this is a good thing.
Dylan,
all I'm saying is that this comparison between Ukraine and Russia is so shit, and you're going for straws, man.
Dylan,
that's all I'm saying.
I know you have to put in that it's bad because truly it's undefensible. But the comparison I made was
this obsession? It's a debate.
Was at war with the U.S. Now you say, well, let's say the Pope was saying, yeah, you can go kill Americans. But here's the thing. I would still be against that ban. Maybe I would
I hate Lactoid. I really despise Lactoid. What a disgusting guy.
The Catholic citizens of the U.S. have religious rights.
Dishonest piece of shit.
Say, well, you don't get to have religious rights because your religion, your religious structure, right, which is very important when we're talking about Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy, disagrees with our position. I just disagree with you.
You use the religious ban.
This is the point that brings it back.
Ukraine is worse.
Lactoid,
this
stop.
Isn't comparable
Dylan.
To shutting down all the churches.
We got it. I believe you guys. I wonderful. It's wonderful to see the fight, the vim, the vigor. Loaderbox.
Dishonest piece of shit. I swear to God.
Maybe get us back and steer us back to our course, because there is a major summit happening tomorrow, which could potentially steer us on either a path to peace, or just throw off peace altogether, or change America's stance to the war to be either far more pro-Ukraine or far more anti-Ukraine or pro-Russia even. So it's helpful and useful to talk about. Should Trump or any American leader be meeting with Putin or meeting with the Russian government without Ukrainian representatives there? Do you think that that's a good idea? Why or why not? Do you think it's maybe necessary, perhaps, to make to find out what one side wants without the other interfering? Like, what are your thoughts on here? I guess the question that I did ask that everyone forgot is, what role should the American government be taking in the peace process or the conflict resolution process that is going on?
I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with meeting separately with other leaders. Obviously, with countries that are at war, you probably sometimes have to have mediators that don't involve the two leaders being in the same room for kind of obvious reasons. But there's probably an issue with doing it in a capacity where you're taking where you're doing it in Alaska and also misspeaking and making Russian nationalists, like extremists, think that you might be wanting to suggest that Alaska actually is rightfully Russian. So that was a bit silly. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter in the sense that Putin, as far as I know, still does not want any security guarantees for Ukraine to ever be solidified in a way that would make it difficult for him to try again and catch more later. I don't think things have changed in the last couple of months since I last looked properly into this, but as far as I know, it seems like Russia has a bit of an advantage to keep the fighting going. So I feel like any demand they're going to make is going to be far too excessive for anyone to meaningfully go with. Trump, I guess it just depends on who was nicer to him in his last night's fucking dream on the day. I feel like his opinion is just completely contingent on whatever mood he just happens to be in that day.
role or position should the American government, whether it be Trump or a
What a
representative,
joke.
be taking in the conflict resolution peace process here? I guess to also add, as Lonerbox brought up, does Putin even actually want peace in this instance? And what has he done to signal that, if anything? Go ahead. I'll let Dylan go first, and we'll let Lactoid go. So Lactoid can have the last word, quote unquote, right, if he wants.
It's not going to happen.
Sure. Okay, so let me just say, everything Lactoid's going to say after me is a lie, but he's going to wait to talk after me because he's a scum. I just want to quickly declare that. And if he responds to me in any way, he's gay. Anyway, the leak. I don't think anything will matter until the structures are in place to stop another war. My problem with hand over this little.
What are the structures in place to stop the other war? Can you elaborate on that? What does that mean?
An example of that would be some amount of mutual defense pact that would make another war so catastrophic in conception that it wouldn't be possible. The same thing that had Soviet and American tanks facing down in Berlin, but made us say it's not worth it, you know? Now, it doesn't have to be
It was more like
atomic
nuke.
Armageddon. It could just be a quagmire of all quagmires. It could be any number of conceptions. One thing, of course, NATO
Germany was
is
more
the one that everyone talks about. It also doesn't need to necessarily be NATO membership. It could be a multilateral defense pact between the United States, the United Kingdom, and some other sympathetic nations with Ukraine under the idea that if they were invaded again, there would be troops on the ground or some amount of response that would make it so overwhelming for the Russians that they wouldn't invade again. And I imagine the Russians would try to find some guarantee that Ukraine would not invade them again. Remember that time they did? I forget that. I missed the headlines, but just to make sure that they don't do that again. But they until there's structures that will stop the Russians from taking the opportunity, even if we somehow convince Putin that this is the end of this war, Putin's not the only Russian hardcore nationalist. In fact, Putin's not even necessarily the most extreme Russian nationalist. And so the idea that Putin dies and was replaced by somebody who, you know, with such a, let's just say, centric model with all the power structures revolving around one person, he's going to be a little nervous about showing weakness, and then he might take the advantage to relaunch the war.
Dylan's doing well.
It should be that no matter who's in that seat, relaunching the war would be a catastrophe. And I think that by making Ukraine neutral and then not placing anything else,
he's dealing with
a
very dishonest person.
All you're doing is leaving that possibility up to chance.
He's saying that Russia and Ukraine are equally bad, equally undemocratic.
Generation of Ukrainians and Russians and Europeans, but also another generation of humans who are going to be having to live in the background of a possible showdown between atomic powers in between.
Lonerbox is on the right side.
I'm going to give all my wrong takes. So, unfortunately,
Lonerbox
one of them actually
is in the right
with
here.
Something Lonerbox said. So I guess we're both wrong, which is that there is nothing inherently wrong with meeting separately. I think that's totally reasonable given the situation. I think that we absolutely have our heads in the sand if we're going to pretend that like America isn't directly invested in this. I mean, we've given a boatload of money and there's an influence.
Yeah, I get with the program. I
kind of
get on the topic. I don't really care about that right now.
Influence member, and that's going to really, I think, be the reason why it makes sense for America to have this conversation with Russia. I think it's honestly more important for America to have this conversation with Russia than just simply a meeting between Ukraine and Russia, because the real question on what this will end up on has to do with what America's reaction is going to be, because that's going to dictate what Ukraine can or can't do. Without American support, Ukraine is simply not going to be able to continue this war, especially how things are going. Right? Support for the war in Ukraine has absolutely plummeted. There's been new polling out, right, in which the support for the war has dropped down to 20 percentages since being up from the 70 percentages at the beginning of the war. So. And this probably has to do with the fact that 75% of its military is currently conscripts drafted into the conflict. It's generally this is bad for morale and enthusiasm, and so they're looking for peace. But I also agree that the demands are going to be relatively hefty, and I think in many ways fair but hefty to a point where a government's going to have to explain to the more hardline factions of its people why they have to give territory over, why they have to agree to never join NATO. And then specifically addressing the NATO part, I mean, I understand there's still this dream of like, well, we can get Ukraine into NATO or some kind of like, multi-force like defense pact or something along those lines. I mean, this to me actually is like, my position right now is, I think, and I'm willing to be corrected. I don't think I would dislike seeing that outcome. I think it'd be like, having those areas go over to Russia and then have the remainder of Ukraine kind of like become our sort of EU like puppet state. I think that would be, kind of good for me as an American. But it's sort of just like this fantasy, right? The Russians have made it clear that this is like really, I think, one of the main thrusts of the war. Even more so than territorial acquisition, because again, that initial peace deal that was presented didn't it didn't make territorial acquisition clear at first, or at all. Sorry. Instead, what it said was, you can't join NATO and your military is too big, right? We're concerned about the threat that you pose by existing as you do. So this idea that like we're going to tell a country that's winning the war, actually, like, yeah, they're going to do the main thing that you don't want them to do, and the reason why this war really happened in the first place. I mean, good luck. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Responses, if any.
I mean, again, it doesn't necessarily need to be NATO. It could be a unilateral or multilateral defense pact with nation states that would probably be within NATO. Whether or not that's a distinction without a difference,
Poland.
I don't particularly see any other solution besides leaving it for chance that Russia will now take the much weaker, demilitarized state of Ukraine as a weak target that they could invade in 6 to 12 or however many months once the demilitarization process has completed and the Ukrainians have withdrawn from some of the most defensible positions in the country that the Russians are grinding themselves against. As for like what we should do to bring about an end at the peace table, at the negotiating table, this is what Trump should do. You know what Trump should do? Okay, Trump should go in there and he should say, fantastic, there'll be this business deal, there'll be that business deal. If you stop and you do the ceasefire and then you go into a peace deal, we can formalize the business deals, we can do this and we can do that. You are going to have to give up some of the territory you're occupying. I said publicly, I'm going to try to get some land back. I got to do it. I got to do it. And he goes in there and he says, that's the one option. The other option,
I heard he wants to give minerals.
We do ramp up the sanctions. Not only do we ramp up the sanctions, but we also seize assets, the hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Russian assets in Europe. If you want to talk about cost, that's one way to deal with cost for at least a few years. The Russian economy is not in the best position it has been. Most Russian state media outlets, as well as Russian economists, are acknowledging that they are on a one-way path to recession, and it doesn't look good. And the only burgeoning part of the economic sector in Russia right now is the war sector, which is not an endless machine. You cannot just endlessly pump out tanks. Also, and I think Lactoid will probably agree with this, we should bomb Russia. I think that we should assist the Ukrainians in bombing the Russians, particularly in the targeting of production facilities for Shahed drones, ballistic missiles, and the things that have been terrorizing Ukrainian civilian infrastructure.
When you say
this should be done. When I say
assist,
I mean give them the intelligence and give them the weapons to do it themselves.
Okay, I was just curious what you.
We've used this level of separation before.
He said that
we've been fine.
Like he said that almost laughing, but it's true.
Do you agree with that, Lunarbox? I'm just really curious. Do you think that the Americans should be assisting?
I think so.
In bombing Russian targets in that with that kind of manner.
Yeah, I think Europe obviously has to play a bigger role than they have in the last 10, 15, 20 years. But, like Biden said, there needs to be more of a moral center in Europe against these kinds of violations. But you can't do the opposite. Like,
what do you have? Hungary and Slovakia right now in opposition.
Try to pretend that Russia has any kind of legitimate concern about NATO. I mean, you've had Tallinn, which is not that far from St. Petersburg and Moscow. Riga is not that far from St. Petersburg and Moscow. Both these countries have been in NATO for a very long time. Finland is now in NATO with an enormous fucking border with Russia. Russia doesn't really have that much of a right to think that to treat NATO as a threat so large that they get to invade another country that they've recognized the territorial sovereignty of to avoid. You can't reward aggression, because the real reason Russia doesn't want strong security guarantees for Ukraine is so they can get more later. That's it.
That's true.
There's a few more, a few quick things. I'll try to make it quick. I did want to just add also, there should be a little, and you know this is rough, but if the Russians want to continue a war, I mean it is war. You have to increase Russian casualties. You have to. I mean they are doing mass infantry assaults across the line, and obviously if you were giving infantry thermal blankets and telling them to shuffle through a forest, cluster munitions, artillery shells, mortar shells, RPG warheads attached to FPV drones. All of these things are tools that you could use to deal with that problem. And the more tools you put in your tool belt, and the more you can grind it down and bring up the cost, honestly, the sooner I think the war will end. Or at least the sooner the war will end without a third or fourth chapter. And I say fourth chapter because I'm very pessimistic. As for like Zelensky and Putin not having to meet, this is one thing I just wanted to quickly address. I do think it would be good for the reason that Lectoid raised earlier. He talked about the need for Zelensky to have an election to raise legitimacy of the office, so it would hurt the Russians when trying to delegitimize them for a future invasion. Well, if Zelensky and Putin were able to meet and the United States government able to make Putin and Zelensky meet, then that would be a certain amount of legitimacy that is being garnered not only to Zelensky, but also the Ukrainian representatives as a whole, the Rada, the entity of Kiev, XYZ, like the idea of Ukraine. And until the Russians are willing to sit down with the Kiev authorities, whatever they may be, it seems to be like a continued commentary, at least for many people in Russia, of a delegitimization of the Ukrainian state and the Ukrainian government. So until they meet, it is going to make it seem less likely to succeed, not only the peace deal, but just the recognition of their neighbors as their sovereign neighbor.
All right. I agree that Zelensky and Putin should meet. No disagreement there. I think that'd be fine.
Well, that's new.
I don't think it's needed, but I think it's good when world leaders try to discuss an end to conflict. That's good. So I'm against bombing Russia. I'm against U.S.
I guess you're okay with the bombing of Ukraine.
Bombing Russia. I think that would be bad. I don't think we ever even came close to that during the Cold War. Maybe someone can educate me on a situation in which U.S. bombers flew over Soviet cities and bombed factories. That would be, I think, really bad. In the event that we're giving Ukraine all the tools to then go and bomb Russia, I'm obviously, I still think this is bad. I don't think it's as bad as if we did it directly for obvious reasons. I think if we did it directly, I mean, this is a nuclear armed country. I think that this might be one of the few scenarios in which that actually starts to go on the table, depending on what's hit.
Hello.
Which is like
us hitting them.
I visit Ukraine quite frequently. I'm in Poland right now.
Kind of we're kind of there at that point. Us giving them the stuff, I think it gives the Russians room to expand even further. And because I mean, if you think of something
I report on,
like if we
I do
our war with Iraq,
reporting on children in war.
Of course, we were rewarded for being kind of the invaders there. In our war in Iraq, when we invaded there,
pretty okay.
The Russians started giving.
Well, I'm not okay now. I hear a lot of nonsense from Lactoid here.
That they were then using to fire at Washington D.C. I think that would be really the Americans.
I write articles. I produce videos on the topic of children, kidnapped children by Russia.
Is taking the fact that their own cities are being bombed in what historically would have been some kind of proxy conflict, but now is a very direct conflict involving Russia directly. So I don't like the idea of bombing Russia. I do, but of course I'm against giving Ukraine more money, so that should probably be obvious. And
you're pro-Russia winning.
Thing, again, I mean, this could be applied really to any war when it comes to the victor. We are rewarded when we win, and we are punished when we lose. And it's just this fantasy land of Russia's not going to eventually get something out of this war. I mean, you're right that perhaps we could win if we did start bombing Russia directly.
I am a bit of a journalist,
conventional invasion.
Just like the person in this video in the upper left.
Well,
corner.
Just to be clear, I'm not
the person that has the Ukrainian flag.
Alaska too.
I'll let you go in a second. But during the Cold War, Russians and American troops did kill each other on occasion.
We didn't bomb Soviet cities
and killing. But
yeah, I understand that, but we didn't bomb Soviet cities during the Cold War.
I just wanted to correct the record there. But go ahead.
You didn't correct anything.
Dylan.
We didn't bomb. I specifically said bombing Soviet cities.
Oh, so if we had instead instead of bombing Soviet cities, we'd bombed Soviet military installations, that'd be okay?
If there were Soviet troops like embedded within like their proxy forces in different areas, and then they die, that is wholly different than bombing the cities of them. I would hope that would be clear.
Thank you. I hope I gained a viewer in you.
I do want to throw out there that
I'm preparing to go again.
this did happen historically. Like the Soviets, for example, tested air defense systems in Vietnam against American Hueys. I've met some of the engineers who worked on those air defense systems. So there is historical precedent for the idea of not only direct military launches against American soldiers, but those were not even done by local Vietnamese forces. Those were done by Soviet forces testing the weapons.
I mean, we're Eastern Europeans, of course, we will be into bombing Russia.
World War III did not lead to this gigantic, interstate conflict.
We know how
when you
the
add layers
Ruskimir
of
tastes like.
separability between atomic hellfire and yourself as a leader, you tend to take that level of separation. A leader is very slow to use the nuke, and if they can see a better pathway, they tend to take it. This has been true for the Russians. This has been true for the Chinese. This has been true for the Indians. And so far, Biden's already tested the theory of giving the Ukrainians the missiles and then giving them the coordinates and then having them strike it and then having them disable the target. And it did not lead to this,
nuclear war.
It didn't lead to any escalation. In fact, not only did it not lead to a gigantic confrontation, if anything, the Russians started kind of downplaying the Kursk incursion, downplaying these things in some ways to try to do a little PR cover. But the point is, I don't think that it would be that big of a risk to us for us to target Russia's war-making capacity, not their civilian infrastructure, not like some water treatment plant, but specifically the factories that are making the drones that are being dropped on Ukrainian cities, that are flying towards Ukrainian cities every day. I did also want to just throw out there that polling about support for the war. That is true that there has been a drop in the amount of people who want to see the war continue by double digits. But also, when you add follow-up questions about things like, would you be willing to end the war on Russia's terms, and then they describe, broadly speaking, what the Russians are offering, and then you have something like 80% of Ukrainians that reject it. So, yes, it is true that most Ukrainians, after 4 years of war in their backyard and cities being razed to the ground, they want to see the end of the war. But,
but how? What
sacrifice what the Russians are asking of them. So, yes, they want to see the end of the war, but there's context.
So I'm going to clarify that. Can I clarify that context, because there's a little context that Dylan's also leaving out.
For Dylan after that.
Sure. So you're right. There are follow-up questions. However, when asked of these follow-up questions of different plans that could be negotiated, because again, the question is, should we fight till victory or reach some kind of negotiated end to the war? Most Ukrainians are in favor of a negotiation that does result in some territory being transferred over to the Russians. You're right that they want to see some kind of negotiation that doesn't give the Russians everything that they're asking for. That's true. But I think that this is more of a proxy to me in terms of war enthusiasm. Where at the beginning of the war, everyone's like, we're going to fight until the end. We're going to win this war. But now they're like, shit, this sucks. We're going to fight. We're going to
because the West fucked Ukraine over.
And that's different, of course, compared to the Russian side. That is, the war is primarily popular within Russia right now. Now
that's
not true.
At least based on the numbers. I mean, I'm sure you're going to say they're fake. I mean, you could
the
find me
war is not widely popular in Russia.
What I've researched.
I don't know what your numbers are, so I couldn't say if they were fake or not.
Sure.
But I mean,
I'll send them to you after the debate.
The numbers that I have seen seem to suggest that the majority of Russians would like an immediate negotiated settlement to the war. That most of them are not maximalists who want to take Kiev or want to push on to these more extreme war demands.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
Most of them at this point kind of want to cut the losses and get it all over with.
But the current demands aren't marching all the way to Kiev, just to be clear about that. The other thing I wanted to say is
the majority of Russians don't seem that pressed to cross the river again.
I just
don't see it.
I want to make it very clear, because again, I made
the majority of Russians are not pro-war. I don't know where he took that from.
My point is, I think that there could be a major escalation, potentially including like tactical nuclear weapons or some kind of nuclear response.
Anything could happen
in the event that American bombers fly over Russian cities and bomb Russian cities. Very specifically. I understand this hasn't happened in the Vietnam context, and this hasn't happened when it came to us giving certain weapons to Ukrainians. But I do think that both of those situations are bad for not only all the reasons I outlined earlier in this debate, but it's bad because of the potential for the Russians to take that is like, okay, we're going to go further and expand our war to potentially even including Kharkiv, which they occupy a part of.
If American bombs and American bombers were to strike at Russian forces within the borders of Ukraine, would you think it would lead to that same escalation, Factoid?
Not the same level, probably not like nuclear retaliation, but it would lead to some kind of serious retaliation.
Like what?
Dylan, during the summit tomorrow, do you think that it is something that Trump should do or will do, or maybe to discuss with Putin, whether I guess I'll ask this: how much do you think that Trump realistically can get Putin to kind of back off his demands that he's?
I don't think he wants to.
At all, right? Do you think that there is any, like, even if it's just a token, and Trump is like, well, if you just give up this portion of Kharkiv or something, or this, right? You know, what
I think the most I could imagine is Sumy and maybe Kharkiv. I keep saying Kharkiv, but it's. I don't even know about that because the Russians would like to take Kupiansk. The Russians are pushing through Vovchansk right now, but the Russians are also getting their teeth kicked in the Sumy Oblast. So I don't know. But I think that's the furthest I could imagine is them offering to give back the relatively small amount of territory that is occupied in the Sumy region that they're currently losing and the Kharkiv region. I mean, that's honestly the most I would expect them to offer, and the Ukrainians aren't going to go for it.
Maybe you know this.
I actually agree with that.
Yeah, maybe you know this, Loner Box. There was talk at least a few months ago of Poland, at least certain groups in Poland wanting to kind of enter the war on Ukraine's behalf. Do you think that that's still a thing that people are talking about?
What?
And do you think that there's any way that that can be done or allowed without involving NATO proper, right? Even though Poland is a part of NATO. Do you think that we could maybe, like, I don't know, just kind of let them off the leash and promise not to invoke Article 5 if they get stomped or whatnot?
Well, last I checked was that Tusk was against that. But
yeah, I've never heard of this. What the fuck? And I'm Polish.
Well, that's why I'm asking you, because I'm not sure, right?
Novaki won. He's not seen as generally as supportive of Ukraine as Tusk, so I don't think he would do it.
Yeah, Novaki's okay. Yeah, he's less likely to do it than Tusk. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's just what you said, but yeah. We're going back to something that Latoid said earlier about whether or not we reward aggression. There's a difference between rewarding aggression and rewarding the winner. The winner
what was that? I've never even heard of this.
Earned it fairly, but they've just created a reality where
there's not really any. I feel like I'm pretty tuned in when it comes to
Russia
Poland and Ukraine.
Like, that's their way. Like, whenever there is an inch, whenever there's an opening that they can take a hold of, they will use it. Like, that's why they. There's some rumblings in Transnistria. Well, Russia goes and sends troops in there. There's rumblings in Georgia, they go in there. That's what they do. They take advantage of where there are possibilities to expand territory, and that's when they did it in Ukraine as well. That's why it didn't happen to NATO countries. That's why people in Europe really want to join NATO. As far as it goes with Ukraine, Ukraine has managed to stave a lot of the Russian invasion, especially the early years, because they had support. I just don't know why, unless you support the aggression, you would ever want to live in a world where this aggression can yield like a reward that couldn't be staved. If you can like reduce the reward that people get to the point that Russia doesn't really claim a victory so much as salvage one compared to what they were initially expecting.
That's why I'm saying if Russia gets what it wants, even slightly, then that just rewards invasion. Because even if the invasion fails, as long as you can get something, you will want to do it.
It's like not the maximal that they could be asking for. The fact that included in their proposal is that that Ukraine would join the European Union, I think, is interesting. You wouldn't see a country that has like an actual goal of like fully incorporating a country into itself.
Because Russia is not proposing Kursk. Russia is proposing Ukrainian territory for Ukrainian territory. That's the swap.
The Eurasian Economic Union. You got to come join our customs union. I think then that might be more of a question of like, what's the kind of the future plans here? The fact that they are presenting that as a sort of preliminary concession, I think is interesting. And then when it comes to, I guess I think we're just going to like, we're going back and forth with examples. I don't know if we're going to be able to like fully agree on this. I don't think there's a substantive difference between how you're describing Russia being rewarded for aggression and really any other power being rewarded for aggression, right? So
yeah, no power should be rewarded
Georgia,
for.
Well, I mean, we can also bring up the fact that the European Union investigated the Georgian conflict, and in 2008 had a report that the Georgians were responsible by shelling South Ossetia. And there was actually kind of an embarrassment in the EU because they wanted the report to say something else, but it didn't. And so, that just to specifically address that one example. When it comes to Transnistria, yeah, I know that there are, and there's some post-Soviet like frozen conflict zones, and there's peacekeeping Russians there. But I mean, so far, and even with the current peace deal, there doesn't seem to be any kind of realistic situation of Transnistria being annexed into Russia with all of Ukraine, or
it's just a puppet. It's just a puppet.
I guess it's
Belarus has also not been annexed.
I highly doubt it. And of course,
it's loyal and it's a puppet that works for Russia.
The U.S. and NATO and really any
Russia
other
likes loyal satellites
where it can, and it will be geopolitically rewarded for it. Right? Syria, Libya, Iraq. We were invested in these areas because of their geopolitical importance. Let's not pretend that's not part of this. And so, yeah, we were rewarded for winning, and there really wasn't a punishment on us. And I think Russia's going to see the same. They are winning this war.
There you go. This is basically
kind of serious
Lactoid's
they're probably not going to
mentality in a nutshell. The world is divided into big chess players, and all the other countries are pieces on the board.
Actually somewhat favorable to Ukraine, to some respect, I think would be not only Ukraine joining the EU, but Russia saying they're not going to try to take the rest of Kherson and Zaporizhia, and they're going to give back the areas in Sumy and Kharkiv. I think that is potentially like the best kind of deal that I think Ukraine's going to be able to salvage from the situation. And if Ukraine says no, we're going to keep fighting on, I don't see the situation getting better for them. And that's maybe we just disagree on that, right? But I remember
it depends on what the West does.
Subject, maybe not with you, Lunderbox, but with other people, and Dylan included, for a while now, for months now, and every single time I'm talking about it, I'm saying the Russians are gaining advantage, and then the next time we have the talk, they've gained some advantage. So I don't see it getting better. I mean, maybe things turn around. I can't guarantee that. The Russians are going to continue to win, but everything is pointing to that continuing happening.
Yeah, because
why do you think when Russia says no, why do you think they
the West keeps dropping the ball?
Any kind of security guarantee or multinational security guarantee for Ukraine at this moment in time?
It's going to be the same reason why the U.S. was opposed to Cuban missiles.
Peace deal,
or why we would prevent
no guarantees.
What do you? No, it's not. It's not about Cuba. It's not the same as Cuban missiles. Do you think Russia fears a NATO or even a non-NATO invasion or attack or a strike?
To some extent, yeah. I think Russia fears. I think Russia fears because, of course, NATO has acted offensively in the past for what it deems to be human rights.
Then it should invite Finland,
right?
Well, like I've got two people here who are saying we should bomb it. And so I don't know how hinged Russia believes a lot of Americans are. Maybe
I think they should help by supplying weapons to a country that they're invading. That's not the same as just like, do you think NATO, seriously, do you think there's no way you believe that NATO has any aspiration to capture parts of Russia or to invade parts of Russia? There's no way you believe that.
You are saying, it's incredible. In the same debate, you're openly saying, yes, bomb them. And then you're saying it is totally unbelievable that NATO could pose a direct threat to the Russian territory. Yeah, I don't know how. What
I don't know how to respond to that.
I don't know if it would come in the form of
crippling Russia's war,
some kind of territorial annexation. But here are situations that it could happen. It could happen in
destroying workers' war capability during a war is not the same as invading Russia during peacetime.
That are ceded this time. It could come in the form of some kind of regime change concern, right? There's plenty of reasons. You can just say, well, Russia has no reason to fear anything. Why don't they just disband their military, right? They got nothing to fear when it comes to NATO. And I think this is just, again, it's myopic and it's not factoring in what they're afraid of.
So asking a country, a sovereign state, to dismantle its own military is not the same as asking them to tolerate other countries that are not them joining defensive alliances. All the examples you gave there, by the way, was assuming that Russia might fear NATO coming to help Ukraine reclaim their territory. Even Crimea, that would be Ukraine reclaiming territory that Russia has officially recognized as Russian, as far as the Budapest Memorandum goes. And also majority voted to be in part of Ukraine for independence.
So is this not? So, okay, first of all, I don't think when you use the word reclaiming, I don't think that's relevant when we're talking about what the Russian motivation is when it comes to NATO. Russia probably does want to avoid a situation in which Ukraine in the future has some kind of like reconquest ideas when it comes to Crimea. This is probably a major motivation when it comes to their concern about Ukraine being aligned with NATO and Western powers. Russia is also probably concerned about the potential of regime change. I'm sorry, we are not strangers to looking at a country and like figuring out some way of removing the leader we don't like and putting somebody else.
Libya? Is that you think Putin's worried that he's going to get fucking bayoneted in the ass like by what? I don't know. That this is like the most. It's just such an unbelievably like vague, nebulous concern. When is it not just much more clear that Russia just wants to capture more later? Like,
well,
this debate is wild. I know. I know.
It's like weird.
It's very frustrating how much bullshit people peddle.
Earlier, we're advocating for bombing Russia, and just now
I am advocating
supplying Ukraine with the means to hit Russia. Yes.
Well, I'm pretty. Didn't Wick? Maybe I'm wrong.
You are wrong.
Ask if like America bombing.
I think you're mixing up.
Maybe. I mean,
I could.
Dylan also said just to supply Ukraine with means to
attack. I don't want to bomb Russia directly. I just, when he lands in Alaska, one clean shot. Okay.
Okay. All right.
True.
Well, I mean, really, at the end of the day, yeah. So whether or not it's America bombing them directly, maybe if you didn't say that or hint to that, I apologize, Lonerbox. But I think it doesn't necessarily change the kind of risk calculation if they're concerned about some other entity that is armed and supplied and trained by America firing missiles also into Russia. They have plenty of reason to want to avoid NATO weaponry in Ukraine. And you also sort of hinted like, that would just be a reconquest if Ukraine came back and took back Crimea. That's something the Russians want to avoid. They don't want to have Crimea go back to Ukraine. So yes, of course they don't want to have them.
Obviously, but do you think it's justified that they don't want Ukraine
Lactoid is very dishonest.
That's what I'm asking you.
Well, no, there's two different questions now, because the first question is why would they want Ukraine to not be part of NATO, and that involves like geopolitical interest of not wanting Ukraine to pose a threat to Crimea again. But if we want to go back to justification, I mean that goes back to the moral arguments that Wick
NATO would not just allow Ukraine to. Actually, Ukraine being in NATO would be an incentive.
Based on the events,
like NATO would keep Ukraine from attacking.
Well, before the polling was mixed, but in any case, it's like.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
It was absolutely.
Are you referring to the IRI? Yeah. Okay.
No.
No, but he's a good streamer.
No. So my understanding is that my understanding is that there's been multiple polls on this. The UN launched a poll that found that most Crimeans would vote to leave Ukraine and join Russia. This was between I think 2011, and then
it depends on which poll in that UN poll you read.
No. I've seen you misrepresent this. Listen very closely to my words.
Yeah, it speaks to a person that never misrepresents anything, right?
But there is a different chart that you scroll down. Like when you're scrolling, you scroll over it every time when you're.
I know. It's all the same shit.
Different section.
It's annoying.
Yes, there is a different
all the same shit.
That specifically asks if it came to a vote today, who would you vote? And there's only two options.
On this question. What do we Wikipedia? What?
I'm saying when you bring up, because I've seen you do this. Sometimes I've lurked on your stream once or twice, Dylan, maybe for like 10 minutes each. Okay, I've seen you do this. You specifically try to rebut me on this specific claim when it comes to the UN poll, and you'll bring up the Crimean autonomy referendum Wikipedia, and you'll scroll down. You scroll right past the results that I'm referring to and scroll to a different table that is asking a different question. Okay, the very specific question that I'm saying, or the very specific thing I'm saying, is that when the UN polled the Crimeans, over 70% of them, according to the most recent one, and the UN said they would vote to leave Ukraine and join Russia. Only 14% said they would not vote. And then I think 30-something% were undecided. But
I think the UN reaffirmed Ukraine's territorial integrity. Why do you think they condemned the annexation?
So again, totally different line of thought. Right now I'm talking about the self-determination of the Crimean people. I'm talking about the fact that the people there wanted to vote to leave Ukraine.
Black Take misrepresents No, they didn't say they wanted to leave Ukraine and join Russia. They said they were sympathetic towards Russia.
When you're talking about why does the UN currently deem it to be, what specific question you asked, Lonerbox?
The annexation to be illegitimate, and they reaffirm it to be part of Ukraine.
Yeah, they probably are appealing to like an idea of international law, national sovereignty, stuff like that. They're not going to challenge. They're not going to. I mean, I disagree with it on sometimes. I disagree with it. For example, if the government's like doing a bunch of bad shit, sometimes you get to violate their sovereignty and go in and stop them. I also disagree with
how a majority of people in Scotland voted to stay in the EU, and then obviously the English vote took us out of the EU. Does that mean the EU should come and like fucking
just a housekeeping thing before
those Scottish people voted in that election too?
Just a housekeeping thing. If anyone wants to send me the poll, right? Or
but we voted to stay in the EU.
We can look at it. Right.
Which poll? Because there's multiple polls. I think he's talking about a Wikipedia article.
True,
I tagged you on Twitter on this and you didn't respond. I literally tagged you the exact
chart.
I did. I tagged you the exact fucking screenshot.
Sorry.
I tagged you.
I'm sure. I tagged you the exact fucking screenshot with a link to the UN study. It has the table that you're referring to, which we can talk about, and there's a complex explanation for that. But it's not the question that I'm referring to. The question I'm referring to is, if you voted, how would you vote? Would you vote to leave or would you vote to stay? The vast majority of Crimeans would vote to leave. This is important, okay, because it shows what the actual preferences of Crimeans one way or the other.
Can I ask you
why do you want to go past the polling from the Razumkov Center or even by Gallup? I guess you'd say that was USAID, but it was Gallup the poll.
No, it wasn't. It was the Baltic. It's Baltic Surveys Limited, which claims to be an affiliate of the Gallup organization, and they got the data from a. They didn't even go in and get the data. So, and by the way, I've tried to find data or find information on that specific poll, and it's not clear if Gallup was ever involved at all. What it appears to be is that Baltic Surveys Limited claims, and Gallup doesn't even acknowledge them on its own website, but it seems like Baltic Surveys Limited claims to be a Gallup affiliate. Maybe they are.
He's
right?
referring
but
to
Baltic
this.
Surveys Limited commissioned a.
He tagged them.
Poll,
yeah, I know.
Which then that poll came from a different organization that was on the ground in Ukraine, and then they got that information from that, and then it was funded by the IRI, which is a Republican think tank, and USAID. That's a lot of concern, especially when this poll goes against the UN. It goes against the findings. It goes against the findings of the UN. It goes against the findings of Pew Research, and it goes against what the results are in the referendum.
But it says here that it was conducted after Russian forces seized control of Crimea.
Sources, as opposed to
some survey.
How much is it worth?
Result of the referendum that agrees with polls.
It agrees. No, it's 95%, or I think it's 93% of the people who voted, and 20% of the population boycotted the election. And so when you look at it that way, actually more. It's like roughly in line with the Pew Research poll that came immediately afterwards, which found that only 4% said that the Ukraine should not recognize the results of the referendum, and 88% said yes. You have to factor in the people who also don't vote.
The people who voted, weren't they locked? The parliament wasn't locked in by Russian troops that went in there with?
Yes,
guns?
This was after there were troops on the ground.
Thing. Yes. That's before. That's testimony by Igor Girkin, who said when they took over the Crimean parliament, they held the politicians at gunpoint and made them dissolve it.
Irrelevant to the actual.
Yeah, it's a separate thing. It's a separate thing. I mean, it's wrong, obviously, but it's separate from the polling of the public. I mean,
which was still done after Russia's forces.
I can't find the Wikipedia. I looked up Wiki Crimea polling to see if I could find this Wikipedia. I can't find it. If someone can send it to me,
I will post it in the group chat.
Okay, thank you.
It's just that there are different poll results because the Razumkov Center that said 60% of them would want to join.
I'm pretty sure that said 63%, which is still pretty close to this. Yes, but that was I think earlier.
And then a similar number, 53.8, saying that they would also want autonomy within Ukraine. This is not a basis for a military to come into the country.
Let me explain. The poll you're referring to right there, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, that was from 2008, which is before the UN poll that has the latest results in 2011. The UN poll from 2011 has over 70% of Crimeans saying they would vote to leave to join Russia.
If you're,
I will. Yeah. I'm responding to Lonerbox right now. Give me 1 second.
While you
can you show it on screen?
I can't. No, I cannot do three things at the same time. I'm sorry. I'm responding, and then I will.
We're gonna look it up.
The results because I have it all. I have it all. Okay, I can find it for you.
I actually have it. I'll send it. Somebody send
it. Great. So when you're saying that 60, what would you say, 63% from the Razumkov Center? if you're saying that like 63% are saying yes, we would vote to leave Ukraine and
I
join
don't see
Russia,
a
but in the event
2011
they don't
poll.
let us do that, we still want to have greater autonomy.
Well, I didn't say in the event they don't let us do that.
I don't see any 2011 one.
Okay, but a higher percentage would just prefer straight out, let's just leave and join Russia.
Yeah, and numbers like this are not a basis ever for a military to come in and hold a referendum at gunpoint. This is just not what you do.
No, so it can be if the people there have their democratic will violated by a unconstitutional coup, like how the U.S. left the UK, which we 100% had a right to do.
Okay, is this what you're talking about right
Unless you want to deny our revolution.
Lactoid, is this what you're looking at right here?
Yeah.
Okay. So in 2011...
65%, my bad. 65%. I overstated it.
Yeah, 65%. And to be clear, it was 70% in 2009, and it's reduced to 65% 2011 quarter 4. Is 2011 the most recent one?
2011 was when
sample of 1,200.
Look at the no vote. It's 14.2%.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So 14.2%
it was a sample of
1,200 no in terms of staying with Ukraine, or sorry, to stay with Ukraine.
Out of interest, when you keep saying they have their sovereignty violated, you compare that to America.
Could you do me a tiny favor? Just the tiniest favor.
What's that?
Yeah, you want to scroll down and talk about the table below?
If you want to right now, I was going to talk about something else, but sure, we can do that now.
Sure, yeah, we can talk about this, and we can read the question and realize it's a totally different question, and then talk about what it means.
my point when I'm remembering, this is all coming back to, you've thought about this a lot more than obviously I have. I remember thinking.
Okay, that was a subtle diss.
Well, it came off that way. I didn't mean to. I was just being honest. I didn't know you tweeted at me. But this right here is the UN asking two separate questions, right? They asked one question, then they asked a separate question. And my problem with you, Lactoid, was you just citing because there's one poll here that says, if you just ask people straight up, do you want to be part of Russia? You want to be independent? The UN comes out with the data that says, hey, the majority of them want to be part of Russia. Other polls disagree, but obviously the UN is more credible than a lot of other pollsters, and so it has a lot of weight. Then they ask a separate question, and they ask people, what is the optimal model for you in Crimea? And when you combine the different data points here, become part of the Russian Federation, become an independent state, stay in Ukraine with greater autonomy, stay in Ukraine with the same level of autonomy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you find out that majority of Ukraine.
What the hell happened to my computer? It just froze. Wait, what happened? It just froze. Out of memory. Oh. What's eating up so much of my RAM? I don't have anything on.
Who answered this table also answered the prior table. They also answered the prior question, in which 65% of them said they would vote to leave and join Russia, and only 14% would not vote to join and leave Russia.
But
the reason why,
more nuance,
yeah, I know.
Well, hold on. Yes, but this nuance is irrelevant when it comes to the Crimean referendum, because when you look at it, okay, so the optimal solution, what this question means is, fellow Crimean,
I'm not even using, I'm using 11.2 gigabytes out of 16.
Even like
I have no clue how I ran out of memory.
If you could just have one, which one would it be?
I have no clue what happened.
And yes, in this, 41% said the most optimal solution ever is joining Russia. 11% said, oh, we would want to become independent, but if we can't do that, I guess then we'll join Russia, according to the poll above. A next line here says, stay in Ukraine with greater autonomy, but if we can't do that, I guess join Russia because of the prior question, right? And then obviously I would agree that, and really the votes, the percentages after this would be, well, it is a valid assumption, because the same people who answered this way also answered.
Be it as it may, it is still an assumption. A valid assumption is still just an assumption at the end of the day.
So if the same people are saying that, and then when they're asked a follow-up question of, okay, and then now that we know which way you would vote, what's the most optimal thing you would choose? What this shows is that Crimeans, 41% said 100% yes, Russia, 11% are saying independent, but there must be, for these people, because remember, these people voted, they said they would vote to yes to join Russia. These people are obviously saying the next best alternative is joining Russia. Same thing with stay in Ukraine with greater autonomy, because clearly, perhaps they don't think that Ukraine's going to give them autonomy.
Those people that they were voting for?
Clearly, they would prefer to join Russia in the event that they can't get the optimal scenario.
Was the Euromaidan in 2011? I forget my timeline.
Euromaidan was in
What?
2014, early 2014.
Wick,
After the Maidan,
what
when
the fuck?
Rada was still
And late
functional,
2013.
when Yanukovych
That's
was
what I thought,
gone.
so.
When Yanukovych was
Oh my
gone,
God,
was there any
Wick.
effort from the Crimean, either their equivalent of the parliament or any of their institutions to actually try and push for any kind of autonomy or independence?
It was the Russians went in very quick, and there was a lot of
interesting.
there was a
that they
lot
did that, yeah.
yeah, there was a lot of Crimean self-defense forces that joined up with the Russians and helped them. In fact, a lot of the violence was not actually associated with the Russian military, but with these kind of like Crimean self-defense forces.
Yeah, there were also a lot of indigenous people who fled because they needed to be fucked. I'm just wondering if you read every action like by Russia in this kind of level of very of charitability. Because even I looked up what you said about Georgia and that EU report. Now I haven't read the 700 pages, but it's just like interesting that you left out the fact that besides them saying that Russia's initial counterstrike was legal, then they also said that the military response afterwards was against international law and it was an overreaction because they pushed into Georgia proper. Now, why would they push into further than wherever the issue is if they weren't also just trying to use the opportunity, like I said, using opportunities to reclaim control over former Soviet territory? That's also why did they lie that Georgia was carrying out fucking genocide against people in South Ossetia?
So your point doesn't make sense because it's like directly contradictory to like what you think the general like conclusion is. Because remember, so the EU report blames Georgia for starting it. They do blame both parties for how they conducted the war. They do put blame on Russia for some of the weapons that I think they were using, cluster weapons, which is horrible. And there was blame put on Russia for how they were conducting the war, and there was also blame on Georgia for how they were conducting the war. But then the Russian forces that were in Georgia pulled out and went back to South Ossetia. So if your argument is, well, sometimes the Russians, like other people, start conflicts against the Russians, and then they invade, and then they leave, and then they pull back, and they leave they pull their troops out. Is that your point?
Are we done with this poll, by the way? Can I close it down?
Yeah.
The only thing I wanted to say about this poll is that if you look throughout this data, what you'd have to accept, number one, we're basing a lot off of one poll. We're basing a lot of the fate off of a poll that was 3 years old. And as you could see through time, it was descending in the other direction when it comes to the Russians. But if you look at, you have to assume that to stay in Ukraine with autonomy, become a normal region of Ukraine, that all of these decreased and they all went to be part of Russia.
Like, look like in 2013. Look at this.
Part of
a poll in the International Republican Institute, May 2013. None of this goes to 2013. 50% autonomy in Ukraine. In Ukraine.
Now, I'm not saying that
12%.
We can just disregard this poll. What I am saying is that starting an invasion of a foreign country, capturing that, and then not giving them the options that they wanted is not justified, especially since it's illegal under international law and the Russians agreed that they wouldn't do it.
Okay, a couple things. First of all, I appeals to law right on the backs of a illegal coup. I'm not. Well, bring it back up again. I want to respond to something he said. Come on.
People have seen the number. Can we just get like a JPEG and put it up?
Well, just so first, the stay in Ukraine with reduced autonomy. I mean, it's in terms of like presidential control or whatever. We're talking 0%, 0%, 0%. And yes, in 2011, 0.1% did want this. The only like two here that like really wanted to keep it kind of status quo on the Ukraine side was the 12.4% that wanted to stay in Ukraine with the same level of autonomy, and the 6.1% that wanted to become a normal region of.
You know what I think when I see data like the factoid.
Can I? Well, real quick. So this is not also just one poll. This is a poll from 2011, 2010, 2010, 2010, 2010, 2009, and 2009. This is multiple polls.
What happened after 2011?
Over the course of multiple years. If you had this kind of data, you would be hammering the fuck out of me with it. You would be saying, look, this is what the UN says. When you would look at this data,
what about 2012 and 13?
Especially given that the prior question was asked by the UN.
And early 14.
Today, how would you vote? That is a different question than what is the most optimal scenario. And it's more reflective of what the will is of the people on the ground. And then what the prior point that I think it was Lonerbucks made this, maybe I'm wrong. That was, well, all of a sudden it went to like everybody wanting to join Russia. First of all, that's not necessarily true because once again, you could have people who their optimal scenario is being an independent state or having greater autonomy, come to the vote saying like, well, I prefer Russia to Ukraine as the alternative and still vote that way. But you're also discounting the fact that Crimea in 2010 voted for Yanukovych, and in 2014, who was removed unconstitutionally. You think that might piss off some people and maybe make them have a little bit more affinity towards Russia and a little bit less affinity towards Ukraine?
Well, you have no data on that period.
I don't have all data that necessarily proves that, other than, of course, the referendum results and the Pew data that came 2 months after.
When you point towards the Crimean occupation that followed, even if I was to say that, because you look at the polling, it's mixed. The UN data, not as mixed. When it comes to one poll with the other poll, it says if they were given more options, they wouldn't want to be part of the Russian Federation. But if given one or the other, the UN poll says that from 2009 to 2011 that they did 3 years before the invasion. Now let's say that even if you wanted to be part of the Russian Federation, or let's say you wanted some dual citizenship program, there's probably a bunch of inroads where somebody would have accepted that, right? What the Russians instead chose is to take it upon themselves to invade Ukraine and make it so some in-between settlement was taken off the table. And it's not like the Russians didn't have the leverage in 2014 to try to assert themselves for either language protections or other things in Crimea. It's not like the Russians weren't involved in cultural programs in Crimea before. It's not like the Russians haven't spent tens of millions of dollars to promote Russian culture in Crimea back from Soviet times to today. So them invading and taking over in the manner they did, even if you wanted to be part of Russia, I could see somebody saying, yeah, I'd like to be part of Russia. No, I don't like them invading. I don't want a brother war. No, I don't like what happened to my Tatar neighbors that got taken out back, shot, and dumped in a river. I don't like that happened to that activist. No, I don't like how you can't play Ukrainian music anymore without being arrested. No, I don't like X, Y, and Z. This is why it shouldn't be. I don't know why you laughed at the idea of people in Crimea playing Ukrainian music getting arrested.
Because you're doing the same thing again that I criticized before.
I mean, I asked you for examples of arrests for the Russian of people in.
I know. Super convenient. Super convenient that they pass a law banning it, and then they pass another law saying that media organizations have to be subservient to the state, and then we're like surprised that there's not a bunch of stories out of Ukraine about this. Wow, incredible.
Tavarish, I'm just saying that Russian occupation, the image of it in 2011 and in 2025 is very different, and we can look in retrospect. Somebody who wanted to be part of the DPR, who now has to throw a bag of feces out of their window, might have a different perspective.
The problem with that, though, is that as the conflict was going on, you actually saw support, because Zeus Berlin did 2 different surveys on the DPR that I have, and support for the DPR actually went up over time. I think it was either 2015 to 2016 or 2014 to 2016.
Where was the polling done?
It was done in the It was done both in the there was polling in the Donbass, in the Ukrainian-controlled elements of the Donbass, and the DPR and LPR controlled areas of the Donbass.
And they're saying that both the LPR areas and the non-LPR areas, that support for them increased between 2014 and 2022.
The DPR and LPR areas support for themselves, support for autonomy,
what a mess.
Going back to Ukraine.
What do you mean support for themselves? I'm talking about the region, not the LPR, DPR governments. I'm talking about the people in the region.
Well, because the results are different, right? So if you look at the results for the Ukrainian-controlled section, it's different than if you look at results from the people like in the DPR and the LPR. Because obviously in those areas you have more extreme. Yes. So in the DPR and LPR controlled areas, because it's a different data set, right? I'm referring to a different data set.
Yeah.
That area had increased support for separation from Kiev.
I wonder why.
Time. Yes.
I wonder why.
And what happened to the demographics of the DPR and LPR over time?
Yeah, what did happen? How many people?
This time,
how many million people
the Russians had some
fled?
Kind of colonial project that I've heard. You're not going to be able to provide me any evidence that's sufficient to demonstrate.
That's not what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about. Well, there is a colonial project in other cities like Mariupol, but Donetsk specifically.
What happened to all the people that fled? Like millions of people.
There wasn't a lot of jobs. There wasn't a lot.
What happened to all the people that fled? Became refugees.
That probably didn't help either. And
2 million people fled.
That most of the young people left, and most of the people who stayed in the DPR, to be quite frank, are elderly, or people who would have maybe had more sympathies in some ways towards the Russians. But that also shows that over time, many of the people decided to leave. So yes, if the people who thought it was shit leave, then the support for the occupation is going to go up. But the quality of life in occupied Donetsk has continuously degraded since 2014. I mean, I still get fairy tale stories from people from Donetsk about the football games, the Donetsk stadium that just, obviously don't happen anymore.
Look,
Okay.
that could happen. Can I say one thing? That could happen.
No, it
But,
could
like,
happen. It happened.
I'm a little bit,
Factually,
like,
2 million
miffed,
people
or I
fled.
guess not really super. I don't take it super well when there's all this concern now for the people living in the DPR. When the Ukrainian government was launching, according to Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, was torturing them, firing cluster missiles into civilian areas, and how most of the civilian deaths that occurred during the war between 2014 and 2022, most of the civilian deaths were in the DPR and the LPR. Why? Because of Ukrainian military action.
That's not true. You have to.
The bombing, there was.
That's not true.
The Ukrainian and Russian armies. This is just sad. The Ukrainian and Russian armies come from a Soviet doctrine and a type of, let's just say, leadership morality lack. Definitely back in 2014, that led to commanders on both sides being very loose when it came to the types of bombing.
But
they
saying that
with,
only
and the
Ukraine
fact
did
that they
it
wanted to
is
preserve their
laughable.
personnel. I don't particularly think that the Ukrainians were bombing them in such a way that justified the Russians coming in and either doing the exact same thing as. I mean, like, for example, when the Russians invaded in 2022, their big claim was there's some sort of genocide going on to the Donbass. They use the word genocide because it's basically saying, like, you're in the Super Bowl of crimes. It's essentially trying to get attention from this type of bombing. And the bombing, it was bad, but it was sporadic. It was on both sides, and
I wouldn't call it a genocide. I think it was war crimes, but I don't think it was a genocide. I agree.
Okay, I do need to make a little money, so I'm going to read my super chats now. Okay.
Also, before you do that, Wick, just to come back to Georgia again.
Yeah.
There were like tens of thousands of people, ethnic Georgians, who fled South Ossetia in 2008
and Abkhazia. And
Abkhazia as well, and that they couldn't go back. Again, this is like still, and not even to mention that these are two.
That wasn't enforced by the Russia.
Russia doesn't have a right to either of these territories anyway. They don't even. Why are they there at all? It's not like it's not like South Ossetia has got like a massive Russian population.
So the expulsion did happen, and especially in Abkhazia, it happened. That is undoubtedly true. But the Russians didn't do that. That was the local authorities in Abkhazia and South Ossetia that did that. They did push a lot of people out, Georgians out, and I mean that should be condemned. I agree. But in terms of
this is contradictory to your report, which also blamed Russian forces for not being able to stop any atrocities by their forces. So
I know this is not contradictory to probably for I think
2 million people fled.
The report is critical of Russian actions during the war. It's also critical of Georgian actions during the war. The only reason I brought this up is because the most critical finding is that Georgia started it. The report found that Georgia was the one that started it. They started that conflict. The report puts squarely the blame on Georgia for that. And that was a report commissioned by the EU. We're not even talking about the UN. Now we're talking about an open.
Now we have to look it up.
Commissioned a report that found that Georgia was responsible. And then you're saying, like, well, why are the Russians even there? I mean, those were autonomous areas that allowed the Russians there. I don't know.
I gotta ask because
say that again. What did you just say?
Those were autonomous areas that wanted the Russians there to protect them, probably because the Georgians had demonstrated in that war that they would attack without justification, according to the EU report.
We will see what relevant to myself sounds productive to you.
Is in those two places at all.
Imagine being productive.
Do you think it's war? Do you think it's fair if you're an autonomous region and you're worried about this other party violating the ceasefire agreement and attacking you, that it's like reasonable for you to invite like a kind of stronger party to come protect you? I mean, this is literally the argument that you guys make for Ukraine.
What proportion of people in South Ossetia are like ethnic Russians?
I don't see how that's relevant to the point I just made.
Do you think there's like a majority? Like, do you think there's like a?
We have a Reuters report.
1993, it was like an invitation
from 2009.
That's why they're there. Like, there was like popular will.
I think the Russian forces that went into South Ossetia and were stationed in South Ossetia did so at the behest of the South Ossetians and the Abkhazians, because those were the autonomous regions that the EU found were attacked by Georgia unjustifiedly.
You're mixing up two conflicts. I'm talking about the Georgian Civil War in '93 as to why Russia's there at all. They're in a part of you realize that they're in a part of the world that's not the Russian Federation, right? Their military is in an area, dominating an area that is not theirs.
Hold on, let's read back. Seriously, think about this. I'm gonna repeat back to what you just said. A country has a military in another country that's not its own country.
More than that, I'm not talking about American bases in a democracy or a state that lets them in.
Oh, no, we're talking about autonomous regions that were autonomous prior to the breakup of the Soviet Union that wanted Russian forces there.
Autonomous in this,
as opposed to Oz?
A region having autonomous means that they can invite a foreign military in there? Since
potentially, potentially, like if we're going to talk like by terms of international law, I don't exactly know.
But if we're talking about a Native American reservation invite Russia in.
It's incredible that you think this is a gotcha. It's crazy.
No, I can see why you don't like comparing this to other conflicts, because there's just no other comparison that like NATO or any Western countries do that is comparable to this. That's why you don't like making those comparisons. That's why you shifted away from the idea that Putin has a legitimate threat of regime change from NATO. What? Because they did it in Libya, a guy that was basically like despised by his entire population anyway. I don't know why. Like,
it wasn't the only example I brought up, and that wasn't the only motivation that could happen.
Yeah, I know, but it's not. It's a completely invalid one. That's the point. It's just like ridiculous that you brought up in the first place.
Yeah, I think that you thinking that the Russians don't have some anxiety about like a long-term regime change project from NATO, I think that's just
how would that go? Yeah, okay, yeah. How would that go? How would NATO do a
ridiculous?
I can like speculate as to potential.
Speculate. It's always speculation.
Like some kind
That's
of like
always speculation.
Like antagonism, kind of like how we saw like between like when Japan launched their war, right? Like the Marco Polo Bridge incident, where they sort of manufacture crises. It could be that Russia actually like does see itself in the future committing things that the West would call, and even me would call like human rights abuses or some other.
Why am I watching this on WEC when I could be watching this on,
human rights abuses or some other issue, and this could lead to NATO like having sufficient military threats on the border. This could also be NATO putting a whole bunch of extra shit on the border, causing the Russians to have to like politically respond by putting their own forces on the border, and perhaps Russia might not be in as financially like sound of a position to even do that, and this could lead to destabilization of like a regime in Russia.
Yeah, but we're giving a view to the better person, so
in the future. What I'm saying is that for you to say that Russia has
giving a view to a better person.
No concern or
I'm gonna be
kind of
blunt.
anxiety about this potentially happening in the future.
This person deserves the view more.
You just don't have there's a legitimate fear of NATO using their power to force regime change in Russia. Like that's just, it's at least, not least of all, to the level of that they actually have to put their military into other countries to avoid them joining NATO.
I'll be right back. I'm going to go to the toilet. I'm just gonna let it run. I don't think Mr. Dylan Burns would be angry at me doing this. I'm going to be right back.
We're very concerned about missiles going to Cuba, despite the fact that we, the year prior, launched the Bay of Pigs. And also, I mean, this is speculative, but I would, bet my left nut on this. If Canada had a coup and then started to like put Russian missiles on the border, or like made an agreement to put Russian missiles on the border, or even like hinted that they might do this, we're rolling in tanks. There's just no way we would accept that as America. There's just no way.
Do you think we would have done the Bay of Pigs if Cuba already had the nukes?
I think that potentially, because the Bay of Pigs invasion was primarily done by CIA trained like militants that weren't actually affiliated with the U.S. And so like it was kind of like proxy.
There's a layer of separation, but you acknowledge the difference that Russia having these types of weapons like enters into the scenario that by you, like for example, Israel faces threats in the region. I do not believe that they're anywhere close to being pushed into the sea, in large part due to the fact that they have an atomic arsenal. Kim Jong-un has a lot of threats to his regime. I don't believe that there is any immediate circumstance which he will be invaded due to the possession of these atomic weapons. Russia has the largest atomic arsenal on the planet. There is something that they have that is special due to having that gives them a certain amount of, defensive flexibility.
A certain amount, yeah.
So I do think
I agree with that. A certain amount, yeah.
That this makes it more condemnable for them to engage in this invasion based on the idea of they're going to be put under regime change or invaded, especially when, let's be frank, the European armies were not in the state to be doing any invading of the Russian Federation.
Well, you say that, but like I always get like contradictory sort of like, well, the European military is like significantly larger, more well-funded, more well-armed, and backed by stronger economies than Ukraine. And yet everybody says like, well, look how pathetic Russia is in Ukraine. Like it's supposed to be a 3-day invasion, and here we are 3 years later. Like if that's when you compare the two,
to be clear,
and you see
Ukraine is
Ukraine
purchasing power and the way they have the defense industries matched up.
Yeah, and Europe has more.
When you have the Swiss and you have the German and you have the French industries not working at economies of scale, but are working on a local level, they can't produce the same capacity or at the same scale that Russia can when they produce across the entirety of the Russian Federation. They centralize their command, they centralize their production, and to be quite frank, their purchasing power goes a lot further when it comes to their production in comparison to Germany. And they have lower regulations, and they can run their factories 24/7, 7 days a week if they so choose, which is not the case in many of these countries with labor standards. And so that's why the Russians can produce more artillery than Europe.
Yeah, I think a lot of those countries would probably drop those requirements in the event of war. But
I do want to read some of my super chats. Make a little money.
But it would take
today.
time for them to get that artillery produced, right? Like these factories are taking time.
I don't think any kind of sufficient time that would compare it to Ukraine.
There would be.
I also just want to reiterate, like just for the last time, that like in 1991 to 93, the majority of locals in South Ossetia,
Hassan stream. That's right. If only I had the audience of Hassan. Oh God, I would be so happy.
They abused the fact that they had a presence there. They abused the fact that there were some human rights violations happening, no doubt, and then exaggerated them, and then said, do you think Russia, you agree with that? You think that Russia is wrong when they accuse these countries of committing genocide against their own people? So I don't know why the fuck you're laughing at that.
I'm laughing because you just said, yes, there was like a bunch of human rights things that are a problem. And I'm like, here's what's happening. Here's what's happening, right? You are focusing now. There's the 2008 war that I was focusing on, that Georgia was alleged to have started, and then the Russians came in and then moved back. I mean, this is the more recent conflict that I think is a better proxy for Russia's behavior, right? Going in, stopping the at-fault party, and then leaving. But you're now referencing back just following the fall of the Soviet Union, and then you're referencing a bunch of bad shit apparently that was happening to the Abkhazians in the South Ossetia. I haven't looked in as much depth on the 1993 conflict to come to like a significant enough conclusion, or like a informed enough conclusion to say that the human rights abuses like justified Russian involvement. But this is irrelevant to the conflict I was referring to, which is the 2008 conflict in which Georgia found, or the EU found Georgia to be responsible. Don't you agree that 2008 is probably a better proxy for how Russia operates on the world stage than 1993?
Well, not entirely, because it's still Russia holding on to a territory that they had no place being in the first place.
It was autonomous before the Soviet Union collapsed. It was
autonomous. Doesn't mean that a foreign military can come in by force against the majority will of the people living there. That's not what autonomous means.
You're emulating him so hard. No, it absolutely can, depending on like how they're treated. I already agree that a sufficient level of human rights violations could precipitate some kind of involvement from foreign party. This is
you also agree that Russia exaggerates these violations like quite frequently. So I'm just wondering why you think they do that, if not for just trying to protect that they used to have under their thumb before.
Hello.
A simple explanation.
Am I wrong about the Georgian report? Just real quick. Am I wrong about the Georgian report? The Georgian report didn't find, the EU report on Georgia didn't find Georgia responsible. It found that Georgia did preemptively started as Russia was building up on its borders.
It found them responsible. It found that they started the conflict. It held them responsible for starting the conflict. Yes. Firstly. Secondly, just because you can point to a conflict in which, like Russia says there's a genocide, and then I look into the details, and yes, there's a bunch of bad shit happening. It wouldn't rise to my definition of genocide. I mean, people.
Your definition.
I agree, actually, with something that Dylan said before, which is that sides really like to claim genocide in order to kind of galvanize their position, right? The Ukrainians are, claiming genocide. The Palestinians are claiming genocide. Although, I don't know.
The Ukrainians are claiming genocide because children are being transferred from one group to another, which is definitionally genocide.
Okay. It absolutely
I think Ukrainians are well in their right to claim genocide.
In Georgia in 1993, or the human rights violations that you brushed over, could be sufficient for the Russian military to move in. That I don't know. I haven't done enough research into that specific conflict. I'm talking about the more recent conflict, the one that's a better proxy for Russia's behavior.
The reason you think I brushed over them is because I mentioned that they were happening and that Russia exaggerated it, because that is the common trend. That is what they always do. They always exaggerate violations as an excuse to go in to territory that they just so happen to have recently lost after the fall of the Soviet Union. That's just like the most basic explanation. It's like one of the most fundamental, like normal ways for countries to engage in territorial conquest. It's what the Nazis did when they went into Poland. It's what Russia did when they went into Georgia. It's what they did when they went into Donbass. They just claimed genocide, and that was that's what they do.
If I come
it's
into
just
your
a very
Lactoid,
obvious trend.
Lactoid, if I come
Are you going to do the immigration house comparison?
Just real quick, Lactoid, answer my question, please. If I come into your house and I bring all my friends, you didn't invite me, you didn't ask me to come, and I just start coming into your house, bringing all my buddies in, we start setting up shop, we start moving your furniture around, and you say, hey, get out. We're like, we ignore you, basically. And then after a certain point, you get a gun and you shoot at us because we have invaded your territory. Who started that conflict?
All right, moderator, I'm glad you're getting involved in the discussion.
Again, as well, I don't like that he does.
Notice how
I'm answering. I literally went on to answer the question.
Complained about the moderator entering the conversation.
I literally,
he understands.
I'm trying to answer. You're talking over me. I'm trying to answer. You're talking over me. I went on. It was one quip.
It's
one quip. It's one quip because it's a 3-on-1, and you have been like taking sides this whole time. You did the last debate too. That's whatever. It's how you run things. But I was one quip, and then I was going to go on to answer the question, which is I don't think, just like with immigration, when conservatives say, "Oh, so that you wouldn't let an illegal into your house," which this is a dumb point. You can't compare communities and cultures and countries to somebody's.
Okay, so no argument, just dumb point. Got it.
I'm presenting the argument. When you have a community. When you have a community, I believe in a certain level of self-determination for that community. This would be like me saying, "Oh, you think the U.S. should be independent? So I can just go in your house, go into a room, and then say it's mine because you think
Russia was the UK into Georgia and shot at them."
Yeah, and the Spanish and the French sent troops to the continental U.S. and we armed ourselves and we fought the British. Would you, if it was a house and somebody came in and did that, would that be acceptable? If you want to boil it down to
the difference is that we're comparing it to countries that have broken away from the rule of another empire. Like that's the reason that Russia has these interests in all these countries is because they were what?
Since we care so much about sovereignty and like international law, and you guys keep referencing like the illegal Crimean referendum.
I still have an answer to my question, just to be clear. But
we're going to refer to law, the British Empire's law in 1776. So that's comparable to the norms of today.
You're right. I personally, I think that the self-determination of peoples is really what's important. Now, there obviously, I'm also value a certain level.
Unless they're in Abkhazia and South Ossetia.
I also value a certain level of consistency amongst international dealings, and so I think it's important to have some kind of undemocratic pre-event in order to justify separatism, for example. But when we're talking about the breakup of the Soviet Union, I think this was a sufficient event. I have been critical of Russia's activities in Chechnya following the breakup of the Soviet Union. I think they were wrong for that. I think the Chechens probably should have been granted independence. They probably should have been granted self-determination, just like the people in South Ossetia and Abkhazia. They wanted Russians to be there to defend them. In 2008, they should have let that happen. I think that's perfectly fine.
Just to be clear, if you could find any evidence that a majority of people in Abkhazia and South Ossetia initially wanted Russia to intervene and take that place over in the 90s, that would be very interesting.
I'm going to repeat it for the fourth time. I haven't done the sufficient research into 1993 conflict to know the specifics as to who's the good guy and the bad guy. In 2008, the bad guy was Georgia, according to the EU. Okay, and that was it. And I think you can disagree. You can disagree, but I think that is a better proxy, 2008, because it's much more recent and involves the current president of Russia, right, or the current power structure of Russia. That is a much better proxy for Russia's actions going forward than 1993, immediately following the collapse of the Soviet Union, in which a bunch of republics were declaring independence from this previous super country.
It's not
all these different areas.
Yeah. We have it here. We have an article about it from Reuters. It's not as simplistic as he presents it.
I find of interest. Do you think it's like irrelevant information that Russia's initial
this thing says that Georgia responded in an unjustifiable way to Russian provocation.
Piece of information to 2008.
I think it's irrelevant when we're looking at how Russia operates, because the argument is, well.
And in response, Russia broke international law and violated
an excuse to do something. They'll move in and take as much as possible. 2008, they didn't do that. They didn't start it. Somebody else started.
Blamed Georgia on Wednesday for starting last year's 5-day war with Russia, but was said Moscow's military response went beyond reasonable limits and violated international law.
You're just lying about what happened.
The provocation was...
You are lying about what happened.
The troops leave Georgia proper and go back to South Ossetia.
That's not what I'm saying you're lying about. I'm saying that
building up on the border, like basically like what said.
Who sent in their troops first, and yes, the Georgians shot first.
The report said the war followed tensions and provocations by Russia. But Tagliavi said none of the explanations given by the Georgian authorities in order to provide some form of legal justification for the attack landed valid explanation.
Agreement that Georgia signed. They were allowed there. So that was the ceasefire agreement. They were allowed to be there, and then in 2008, Georgia broke it, according to the EU. And this was the same
Saakashvili had said Georgia was responding to an invasion by Russian forces when it attacked breakaway South Ossetia, but the report found no evidence of this. It said Russia's counterstrike was initially legal, but its military response violated international law when Russian forces pushed into Georgia proper.
And you're talking over me again.
Right when
you're talking over me again.
You're wrong when it doesn't.
You're talking over me. When the EU, who has a vested interest against Russia, concedes something to Russia, I'm much more apt to believe that in the same way that if Russia concedes something to the EU when it has a vested interest to not concede it because there is a rivalry between the EU and Russia, I'd be much more likely to believe that too. I am much less likely to believe the EU presenting something self-serving, and if Russia presents something self-serving, obviously.
The only thing I read the thing. I didn't read the EU report in 2008. In 2008, I think I was playing PlayStation 2, and
I love the PlayStation 2.
Matchbox Cars or something.
I love the PlayStation 2.
It seems, from what I'm reading, the report seems to place the blame on the Russians provoking the Georgians, and then the Georgians over responding to the provocation.
You're wrong.
No, you're wrong, Lactoid. I've researched this topic. You were just misrepresenting.
I just Googled it. I mean, I don't know what it is. I'm reading it
was the conclusion? What was the conclusion that Georgia started it?
Let me
answer yes or no. Yes or no. Was the conclusion that Georgia was responsible for starting the conflict?
I mean, started it how? You mean like did they?
Was the conclusion? Was the stated conclusion? Yes or no?
I had
very straightforward question. Was the stated conclusion of the report that Georgia was the one who started the conflict?
They were the third ones to start shooting.
Do you mean ground incursions or artillery fire?
The report held them responsible for just starting the conflict. That if they were the one who were deemed to be the starters of the conflict. Yes or no?
They take a lot of the blame, but when you say starter of the conflict, that assumes they fired the first shot.
I'm saying the EU blamed them for starting the conflict.
They put a lot of the blame on them for making the conflict what it was by over-responding to Russian provocations. That's what the report says.
Yeah, it does say that.
Wait. When you talk about blame, when people talk about any kind of conflict or any battle or incursion or
it does say that. It's clearly written here.
Underlying issues, and then there are also triggering events like a particular battle or a particular ceasefire that's broken. They're saying that Georgia were the ones who seem to fire the first shot in this particular phase of the conflict, but the underlying issue, and I think the EU report says this as well, is the fact that Russia is in Abkhazia and South Ossetia with their military when they should not be there.
The ceasefire.
Do you disagree with that?
I do disagree, because when you sign a ceasefire, when you have an agreement that you're not going to do this, and then you do it, you're responsible for breaking that, right?
That does not contradict anything I said, but okay,
yeah, but your point doesn't address anything I said either. So okay, fine.
No, it does address it. It addresses the fact that Georgia was found responsible for breaking a ceasefire, but not for the underlying violation and the underlying injustice or the underlying problem here, which is that Russia is in an area where they should not be.
That Georgia agreed to in a ceasefire that they could be. because that ceasefire was in place. They were there. Georgia broke the ceasefire.
Do you think Georgia agreeing to a ceasefire is then consenting to Russia being in Abkhazia and South Ossetia?
Well, no, it means that they're responsible if they break it.
For a
Whether
triggering
they,
event. For
a triggering event. But you're missing the point of the conversation. I brought up Georgia specifically to counter not like the very specific narrative that Russia takes these advantages whenever it can. And in 2008, Russia very easily could have used this as a pretext to take all of Georgia because their troops were in Georgia proper, but that's not what they did. They pulled out, and they weren't even the ones who started it.
So they use it to hold on to territory that they're already claiming that's not theirs. Like, okay.
But again, we didn't start it.
Yeah, they didn't take more territory that's not theirs. They just kept on to they just held on to the territory that they already have after quite a few other numbers of their opponents fled the area and didn't go back.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to read these super chats. $2 from Esoteric Dichotomy to say, we are pro-Ukraine chat, down with Putin.
It's such a stupid argument.
$2 from Kick Nostanza.
That's like trying to say that Russia could have just taken Ukraine in 2014.
What do you think, Lacto?
Could have, should have, would have.
No, I don't think he's a dictator. I think he's an oligarch president to some degree, but I don't think he's a dictator.
To some degree.
Okay. $5
Putin
from
is
Lopan
just Putin is just
for libs to demand
some
North
degree
Korea be re-engaged. The quote-unquote world cannot just let communists get away with aggressively taking land. $5 more from Lopan to say, if Ukraine accepts a deal, will anyone here admit they were wrong? Will you admit you were wrong if Ukraine accepts a deal?
Wrong about what?
Depends on what the deal is. Like,
all of us gave. All of us also gave some percentage of it succeeding. So if it succeeds, none of us are wrong.
Wow.
$2 from Killer Tomato to say only Burns can interrupt plebe. $2 from Fireburn to say liberals are suddenly nationalists. LOL. $10 from Majin to say Lactoid is the GOAT. Easy clap. Another W for Russia, LOL. And then $20 from the same person to say another super chat for the GOAT Wick, because he is the GOAT. Well, I appreciate the money.
Jesus
$5
Christ.
from Usurp to say if Lactoid is one of Russia's
Those
strongest
panels
soldiers,
are just
then
a disaster.
LOL.
What
Dave
a disaster
Timmerman
panel.
for €2 to say what is the good faith Russia horseshit. $2 from Trib1 to say should NATO be disbanded and why or why not. For $2, we're not going to have a discussion for that.
The quick answer is no. But
yeah, Fireburn for $2 says Burns fails the marshmallow test. Is Fireburn like your hater? Does he go around like just super chatting?
Is that to me or?
Yeah, it's to you. It says Burns fails the marshmallow test.
I don't even know. I don't know what the marshmallow test is, but I like marshmallows.
If you were offered, you can have one marshmallow now, or if you wait a day, you get 5 marshmallows. Which would you take? And people who fail the marshmallow test take the first marshmallow.
I'd take the first marshmallow.
Okay, fair enough.
What the
$2
fuck?
for Gay Ben to say Burns thinks well poisoning is a moral duty. $5 from Satan to say, I bet Burns is swimming in Ukraine trim, considering all the men have been deleted. That's why he likes being there.
What?
Shame the devil and tell him the truth.
What?
Ukraine what?
I don't know.
I don't know what Ukraine
I'm
trim
assuming
means.
by context that means women, but I'm not sure.
Oh.
I don't know. $5 from President Sunday to say reminder.
The actual one?
I don't know.
The actual one, yeah.
In comment, it might be. Reminder, the Destiny recorded Cherry without consent and threatened and doxed multiple people who called him out for it. Have a good panel, Bugman. That has nothing to do with anything we're talking about today. But thank you for the $5.
That is another good reason to bomb Russia.
It's $5 Canadian too. So yeah.
That is another good reason to bomb Russia. Well said.
One to say if the poll is reality, the resolution would be to give people in Crimea a path to Russia. No need for invasion. They could just shepherd them to Russia.
Can I say one thing on that?
Go ahead.
They tried to have a vote in 1992, and they tried in 1995, and both times were shut down. And then 2010, when they finally decided, fine, we're going to play by the rules and vote in the election of the Constitution that you put us under, then they overthrew the president. So I don't think they really had any reason to believe that the Ukrainians were going to just let them leave. Crimea is too valuable for that.
Sure. $5 from the Trib One to say Trump will truth out that the deal fell apart due to Zelensky not playing ball, and he'll make sure to let Ukraine know that they don't hold the cards. And then finally, $2 from the Trib One to say, do you all disagree with the 70% chance of it happening? I think we both, all of us agree that that's not a realistic number, but I could be wrong. Okay, gang.
Amazing panel.
We have talked about all sorts of things on this show. Unfortunately, we didn't get as much chance as I would have liked
to actually talk about the topic.
The future is going to be. We were all arguing about the past, and it is important to discuss. And I do thank you all for being here. I do apologize for the quote-unquote lopsided nature of this panel. We did have someone to be on Lactoid's side, but it did not work out. And 10 minutes before showtime,
I should have been on Lactoid's side.
I can't do it anymore.
I also can be a dishonest piece of shit.
Sucks, but show must go on. Okay, with that, I'm going to give each of these lovely individuals a chance to give closing thoughts, closing statements, and maybe I would ask you to give a closing prediction of what will happen tomorrow, because we'll be able to find out how right you were tomorrow. So it'll be interesting for people to watch this in the future to see if you were correct or just super, super wrong. We're going to give it to Loaderbox first, and we're going to go around, and we'll see how it goes. Go ahead, Loaderbox.
Okay, fuck. I think, I guess we've seen quite a lot of very strange, disanalogous comparisons to conflicts that are not really comparable to anything that has happened with Russia and any of their neighbors. The fact is that Russia, before the Soviet Union, was an empire. They conquered territory. They pushed their people into that territory. They fucked with people's languages and their culture, and they
including Crimea.
And they did the same thing under the Soviet Union. So when the Soviet Union collapsed and these countries these republics were divided into different countries, they got incredibly fucking butthurt and decided that especially their leaders, decided that they wanted to reclaim whichever pieces of influence that they could. They say it to this day that they think the fall of the Soviet Union was the biggest catastrophe of the last 100 years, worse than the Holocaust, I guess. And they will use that position and that fact that there is still Russian presence in some of these areas, even if it's very small, like in parts of Georgia, and they will use difficulties and human rights violations and other tensions that occur in these areas to their advantage and use them as opportunities to bring their troops in and to
that is not inaccurate,
that they think is rightfully theirs, or that they can just hold on to in a frozen conflict that they're never going to get pushed out of because they're quite a big force. And they will use the idea of very, very difficult to justify threats when it comes to NATO in Europe, even though NATO already borders Russia in several countries and can actually advance nuclear weapons and everything else quite close to the country. There's a reason countries like Canada don't seek out the help of and the military aid of American adversaries. It's a very simple reason that America doesn't fuck with their territory in the same way that Russia does with former Soviet countries. No one makes a former Soviet country want to join NATO more than Russia. That's what they do. They fuck with these former Soviet countries. They
Poland
they haven't been fucked with yet, legitimately afraid enough that they beg to be in NATO.
Like Poland.
So if Russia doesn't like NATO, then stop fucking with former Soviet
countries.
As for
Ukraine,
it's a real shame that Ukraine is probably not going to get a hold of their pre-2014 borders anytime soon, if even ever. That's just the sad truth of geopolitics and the world that we live in. But I think the best that Ukraine's allies in Europe and America can do is to use the strength that they have to at least make it so that Russia pays a price for such an act of aggression. Because if they don't feel like they paid a price for it, they're going to do more of it.
Okay. Thank you for being here, Loaderbox. Always appreciate you. Always like having your perspective here. Thank you for being here. Go check him out at his channel. I have links to all these individuals in my YouTube description, and they've all.
I hate it when people that don't understand history, don't understand Russia at all.
Dylan Burns
just are propagandists for Russia.
I wasn't informed I was giving you content, Wick. I wouldn't have agreed to this.
I know, it's crazy, right?
First, I want to accept Wick's apology for stacking the panel against me. I think I did quite well with the odds stacked against me. The war is pretty awful right now. In June and July, it was the most deadly month for civilians for the entirety of the war since the opening months, due to an increase in civilian strikes in human safari tactics, that is drones and FPVs, being used to hit fire trucks.
I slept through the worst bombings
civilian evacuation vehicles, a lot of
since the
civilian
start of the war.
cars and people walking around, especially in
I was
areas
in Kyiv.
where anywhere that there's Ukrainian military activity, but especially in the city of Kherson and elsewhere. And it's getting more violent. So there's a real desire I have to not have to keep listening to those buzzing drones. Quite frankly, I would like to sit on my couch and play Red Dead 2 and smoke. Like
Red Dead 2.
But I do think that what's happening there needs to be documented, and I don't think that passivity is going to be what brings the solution here.
The game you want to play is
about Trump.
Expedition
I really wish Trump
33.
brought peace in 24 hours. As much as I never believed in it, I always wanted it. I don't want everybody there to keep dying. It's really sad to see people buried in shallow graves in their own community because it's too dangerous to take their bodies away. So they're buried in their own front yards. And you don't want that to keep going. But every unilateral ceasefire offer has been rejected. All
By Russia.
Deadlines have been passed. All
By Russia.
frameworks have been disregarded.
By
and
Russia.
the limited ceasefires that were supposedly negotiated
Were broken
immediately
by
violated.
Russia.
Many might
By
forget it,
Russia.
but early on during the Trump presidency, he did negotiate a civilian infrastructure ceasefire, which was almost immediately violated.
By Russia.
So I don't have high hopes for tomorrow. And I really do not think that we're going to be able to change the Russians' mind by just talking ethics or talking morals. I think the conditions have to change.
On
I
the
really
ground.
do think ultimately it has to be so costly for the Russians to even think about engaging in another war like this is the only way you're going to stop it. Not by making it so it'd be easier to invade Ukraine through disarmament, getting rid of their most defensible positions, or by doing things that would undermine their national security or Europe's national security.
That's true.
By extension. So I just want to put forward that
Even
while the
Nawrocki
Russians are pushing forward every day,
understands this,
John
the Polish
McNamara
president.
put forward a bunch of numbers that would be good. Mr. McNamara could put numbers that are really good during the Vietnam War, and they could be good in isolation. But if you drag that out and you aren't seeing the breakthrough that the Russian offensive operations request, because at the rate of even the Russian advances at this point, if they were to keep up this rate, it would take them years and years and years and years to reach their objectives. So we need to change it so that that timeline is so far in the distance that they have no choice but to say, it's not worth it. We can't keep this war going for 12 years in the hope that we'll retake X, Y, and Z. And at that point, when the Russians are faced with a choice between grinding their society and their demographics down and
already in a demographic
so
crisis, so
the hope would be that they'd cut their losses. But given their record, who knows?
Well, thank you for being here, Dylan. And you can find his work on his YouTube channel, which I've linked below. Check that out. Really appreciate you. Last but certainly not least,
I'm waiting for a panel around kidnapped children.
Lactoid. You can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch and YouTube. It was great to have this conversation. And to speak frankly, I think dispel a lot of myths that are sort of believed as to this specific conflict. I didn't obviously, as I've said, have enough time to sort of get through all of them.
All of the myths.
There's a lot of like sort of quick falsehoods that people will give you about Euromaidan, about the will of the Crimean people, about the start of this conflict, about what Russia wants to end it. Most normies probably just think this war came out of nowhere. They don't even know about the conflict.
Yeah, Polish people are just normies that have no clue,
They
right?
don't even know anything about Euromaidan. They don't know about the Ukrainian constitution. They don't know about
the journalists that cover this day to day.
I think it's important, as somebody who values dispelling myths, to have these kind of conversations. So I have the opportunity.
A book of myths. A book of myths.
For those of you who kind of heard
day to day
back and forth
journalism. This book was published in 2014.
Do your own research, or if you want me to provide sources for any of the specific claims I made, go ahead and you can reach out to me. You can send me a request for a source. You can even potentially say what I said, or send me a clip of what I said, or something along those lines, and I'd be happy to oblige.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks for being here, and I appreciate you willing to come, even if your partner decided to ditch us That's
Who was the partner?
Oh, hey, congratulations on coming out. I had no clue, Lactoid.
What about what now?
Your
He's
partner.
making a joke.
They didn't
Partner
come.
joke. Okay, it's a joke.
Oh, okay.
I believe. What do we
Nice.
got coming up? So no stream tomorrow, but on Monday
Oh.
I'll be debating against Christian nationalism.
Is Lactoid
It'll
really
be
so
me
slow?
And my buddy Eucharist against Rattlesnake Jake and Eli Nix, and that'll be fun.
Rattlesnake Jake.
Yes, that's his name. Yeah, it's a very big YouTube thing. He does this show with Andrew Wilson on Rumble. Andrew Wilson, by the way, who offered me $20,000 to go 3 rounds in the ring with him, boxing. And then when I accepted it and gave him a date, he ghosted me. I haven't heard from him since. He hasn't said one word. So, that guy. Then
he offered me a boxing match a while ago too. He didn't offer me no $20,000. I'll do it for $20K. Shit, I'll abandon the war for a few months.
That's what I said. Like, even if I lost, I'd do it for fucking $20,000.
I'll step away from the front. Hell, we'll do it in Kiev. We'll do it for charity.
The killing in Kiev. We could, it'd be fun. We'll make a whole production from it. Anyway, then on Thursday,
My God.
Soy Pill called me an incel, and so he's going to try to de-incelify Wick, and we're going to have a panel about that, so tune in for that.
What?
And then on Wednesday, we're probably just going to have some call-ins, and then Friday we'll
Oh my
think of
God.
something. Anyway, I love you all. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well,
I think it went okay. There's some things we didn't get to touch on. I didn't get to touch enough on Donetsk, I don't think, and like what the people of Donetsk want would be best for the people of Donetsk. We didn't get to talk about like Euromaidan, and he kept referencing like the illegal coup of Euromaidan as a reason for the Russians to be invading. But even if it was an illegal coup,
what a meme.
and I'm not conceding it, but let's say it was.
It wasn't.
What's that Russia's business?
Yeah.
Not in there, any of there. There's an illegal coup in Mexico. It doesn't mean I get Baja California. I would like Baja California though.
Would you know? Well
And I
done.
wish we got into specifics of what made Euromaidan happen in the first place. And I have done that with Lactoid inside. The problem is when you do a panel like this, I want to like drill down into a certain point, but these aren't debates between me and Lactoid. This is a conference call of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some of it I would just never get boiled down in unless I had a one-on-one debate, which he can always reach out for if he wants.
Lactoid is not a good faith factor.
I do find it strange that the
Bushu, co jest?
constitutionality of Zelensky's term, he makes it such a big it was like such a big thing. I had no clue he sent me a tweet. I didn't know he added me. I did not know. Or no, that was a separate thing, wasn't it? That was a long debate. That was 3 hours. It kind of all molds together, doesn't it?
Very dishonest stuff.
I
This
think
whole
that was
constitutionality.
the UN polling.
Very
Does
dis.
Lactoid have a large enough audience to actually convince? I don't look. I'm not one to take shots at people's audience sizes because, in my opinion, if you can do this and you can enjoy it, and especially if you can somehow make a career out of it at any size, I should
True.
be happy. But I think he's a smaller creator.
True.
Like I think
I
he's
am a
got, like,
smaller
dozen or
creator.
so viewers, probably at any
goodness.
one time. Maybe a couple dozen. I've never watched
I have
him
a
stream,
small
but I have seen
idea.
him doing. I never did this on Twitch before, but you can like stream as multiple people. I don't know how you do this, but you'll see that people like streaming together, and you can click and you can see all the people. And I've clicked on Gibbs streams before because every once in a while I'll check it on the old panel scene, and I'll see there's like 5 people streaming together, and it'll be Gibbs 33 people, Lactoid 8, or like it'll have like all these different people. It's
I
like a
know.
new feature on Twitch. I don't particularly
I'm not
understand it. It
sure.
merges the chats. Oh, I didn't know it merges the chats too.
I
That's,
I used to know a third party page that did that.
cool.
I used to do
Maybe I
that
should
with.
do that more. Should I have merged with Lactoid's chat?
Yes,
Would you all have appreciated that if I merged with Lactoid's chat?
very much. Merged.
Hippy Dippy would have been insane. Oh my god, all the combined chats with Hippy Dippy. Oh gosh. Oh gosh, that would have actually been a super cool feature. Moderating that would have been hell, but it would have been a super cool feature.
We're seeing a revival, another revival.
Yeah, being gutter chat. Site chat, of course, still gets its dignified role. Tomahawks for Ukraine. They did want it. They did ask for them.
Oh, I guess we can click off,
There
right?
needs to be a nice palate cleanser after whatever that was. A palate cleanser.
I guess we can click off. Wait, what's the... We're gonna see what the palette cleanser is, and then we're gonna click off.
Let's see. Well, we have a new Steve Rosenberg segment that got released. We all know how much I love Steve Rosenberg.
We're gonna click off.
Steve Rosenberg fanatic, talking about Russian state press and how they're reacting to everything that's going on. Yeah, let's go check that out. Let's check that out quick. That's your palate cleanser, is us listening to people who I think are some decent reporters. I don't know how lactoid. I will say the one
Dr. John's
everything else didn't surprise me in that conversation. I don't know why Lactoid would bring up the church ban if he doesn't know the churches that are being banned.
True, because he doesn't care.
Like, I didn't want to be a cunt and be like, what's the name and everything. But if I'm like, I'm banning the faith. What's the faith?
I want to be a cunt.
Islam. Like, it's kind of a problem. To me, it just showed that he probably didn't know about Russian security infiltration or its use for Russia in X, Y, and Z.
And they ask like 1,200 people. Yeah, I know.
This portrayal.
Yeah, I know. Raya too. Yeah, yeah.
Making them worse than the Russians.
That was the sample.
And such. Seems bizarre. Here is Steve Rosenberg.
Okay, I'm not gonna steal this stream anymore.
This is your palate cleanser? What's this?
I don't think he'll appreciate that.
Not this. No. Oh my gosh, you just gave me a flashback. Oh my gosh, I forgot these people existed. Super Seuss? How did you remind me of the existence of Super Seuss?
Who?
Oh my gosh, I forgot this dude was around. This is the dude that would swim in the Chernobyl pools?
Who?
Kind of look like it too, doesn't he? Oh god, how much is this? An hour? Ancient stone discovered. What type of...
Okay, now we're done. Okay, we're done with the... Let's see what President Sunday's up to. Oh, let's see what Lonerbox is up to.
What's a good word that uses 3 vowels? Say A, E, and I. Ben Gavir talked to Marwan in prison. Bro. Wait, what? Do I want to know what came out of that conversation? Was it fruitful?
My mom was obsessed with this for a long time, by the way. Wordle. My mom would just keep me and was like, hey, let's guess the word. Let's do it. Let's guess the word. And I would be like, yeah, I have to go. I have stuff to do. I have, I don't know, duties to perform. And she'd be like, well, let's just guess one more word in Wordle. And we just stay on Wordle.
I'm trying to improve and see. I've got these 2 panel lights that are definitely
and see how we could do Wordle.
Less blinding, and
let's try Wordle.
Controllable, but they're just. I think they're maybe.
I did it so much with mom.
Is that what's going on? They could be brighter. That's an issue.
It's incredible. I didn't think that.
That's an issue.
I didn't think that.
Apparently, he stormed.
Lonerbox would be so much into it. Yeah, I know how to play.
Oh, he threatened Marwan.
I know.
Okay.
Oh my god, do I have to?
Give it a moment.
Can I just play? Okay. call your mom and let's do it. Yeah, but my mom would like to do the Polish version, so you would not have fun. You would not have fun with me doing the Polish version. Okay, let's try some letters.
Oh, why can I?
Okay, let's try some word. What word? Okay, let's try this. Smoke.
Adieu, obviously.
Oh, there you go.
It's a French word.
We only had one word and it's in the wrong place. One letter in the wrong
I'm
place.
sick. Fuck me, bro. Jitler, nice one, good one.
Okay, let's try. No suggestions about words for me? Any suggestions?
With the comic book, does that
Come on.
count? Hey, it does, it totally does. 3 vowels. Get fucked.
Okay.
Oof.
Let's try perks. Because no, K is not a thing.
DEI based.
Wait.
Her is fun. EA and R.
Smell. No, S is not a letter.
Okay, an I.
S is no.
What the fuck? Oh yeah.
Wield.
2 R's.
Let's
fuck
see.
That. I could have done that. That would have been better. Shit.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we're not doing well. So, any suggestions? Come on, help me out here. No one? Nobody? Nobody wants to suggest me any words? We have 4 more tries. And we have 2 letters guessed in the wrong order.
Melt.
Treat. Let me see. It's
No.
Hold on. Wait. E. Yeah, but we need L. Treat does not have L. Treat does not have L in it. Okay, let's see what President Sunday's up to as we do. In Kharkiv and Sumy regions and with major caveats. Oh, he's finally back.
Dude, shit's drawing me. Look at that focus. You almost done, shit?
Yeah.
Just finished.
True.
Does it look like me?
Yeah. Gotcha, exactly.
I bet it's gonna be some weird, disfigured, simplified, scribble.
See.
Oh my god! Okay.
Nice, Chit.
Oh my god.
Very much.
Yeah.
Guess who's back?
Marshall! Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. How's the foot?
Oh, it's getting there.
Oh my god, that is even better.
Yeah, we missed you, man.
Yeah. I don't know how you did it. 2 weeks without work is my worst case scenario.
Yeah. Well, the doctor said it was one of the most serious fractures he'd ever seen.
Yeesh.
Yeah. You know, I once broke my collarbone in 3 places.
What? How?
I fell off a horse.
You did?
Yeah. Got going too fast after I put the quarter in.
What? Go too fast after you put the quarter in. Oh my god.
Oh, there she is. Wow, the girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know about Candace?
Of course. Yeah, she told me about it on the phone.
You guys talk on the phone?
Every night.
Every night?
Every night.
Twice on holidays.
Every phone.
You guys talk on the phone?
Every night.
Every night?
Hello, great. Every night. Oh, I love this.
She is. Wow, the girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know about Candace?
Of course. Yeah, she told me about it on the phone.
You guys talk on the phone?
Every night.
Every night?
Every night.
Twice on holidays.
What? Men can be friends, Kyle. No.
Men can be friends, Kyle.
I know, I just...
Chet, where did you put the box for this thing? I want to return it.
But then what will we give the Employee of the Year?
I don't think that's anything you need to worry about.
Hey, Peter.
Hey, Marshall. Welcome back. Did you happen to get the flowers I sent?
I did, thank you. And please don't feel guilty about anything.
I just didn't realize you were standing that close to the car when I reversed.
Accidents happen.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of accidents, Sam, how's that coffee burn healing? Actually, save it for our phone call tonight.
You talk to Sam too?
Oh my god! Every night.
Kyle, it's healthy for men to communicate. Yeah, no.
Kyle, it's healthy for men to communicate.
I understand that. I just am.
So, Chet, can you arrange for this to be returned?
I can try, but I think an estate sale means that the original owner is dead.
I mean, I think it's pretty dope. Yeah. I mean, I think it's cool too.
Yeah, well, I guess you'll have to earn it.
What the fuck? You wanted to return it and then it's like, oh, we think it's cool. Well, you'll have to earn it.
Game on.
Right.
Well, Marshall, sorry again.
You'll have to earn it. Oh my god.
Feelings?
Oh, yeah, of course, Peter.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Damn this pineapple.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'll
it's fine.
mute myself. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Call you tonight.
What? You talked to Peter too?
Yeah.
It's called connection, Kyle.
I've asked him to stop.
We'll talk about it.
Oh my god. This is the best thing ever. We'll talk about it. Voss survives another fake accusation. Fake accusation. What's the another fake accusation? I have no clue. What's happening with President Sunday then? More Destiny anti-fan debate. 21 viewers by Food Shop. That's not good. That's not fair at all.
This is an hour-long why do I care? Bronze Age mindset. Okay, I don't care about this.
Okay, we need a word.
Here's 45 minutes on a single paragraph from Beyond Good and Evil. Let's do this one. Let's watch Jordan burn Peterson before he got burnt.
Learn. That's a word.
Oh my god.
Elven. We'll try Elven once we try learn.
Recording in a bathroom.
So I'm gonna read
Okay. We have two first letters in the right order.
Reading off the floor.
Beyond Good and Evil, which is a section
Okay.
called Prejudices of Philosophers.
Okay. Okay.
You can tell he's thinking really hard because he's sitting like
We got something going now. What do we do? What do we
The
do?
density of this book.
This audio is
My
awful.
gigglers.
One of the ways of conceptualizing Beyond Good and
We've
Evil,
done it.
this is
We
true
got
of
it.
most great works of. It's true of most great works is that
We got it. Lexic? Oh yeah, let's try it. No, I is black. So it's not a letter we can use. We cannot use I. So lexic is out.
Find on LiveLeak.
from his
Who is that?
interaction with the
He looks
world.
so weird.
And then
Lucy, I have a
gives the
question.
vision.
Yeah, what's your question? Is it related to the word that we're trying to find that it starts with L and E? Ah shit, damn it, fuck, true. Is your question related to the words? If someone asks you to take them off life support, would you do it? Depends on the like if they were so much in pain that they would never be able to live normally ever again, and that their whole existence moving forward would just be pain that could not be lessened or done anything about via painkillers, and it was just a miserable experience, then they could not enjoy life in any way. And if they ask me to get them off life support, then yeah, I would do it. I guess this is like a circumstance under which I would respect their request. Then again, we have more. Should people be able to request to die? I guess is a broader question, right? You know Terry Pratchett, a very famous writer who wrote Discworld. He had Alzheimer's and he started forgetting more and more and more. And he said that at one point he was not able to even type his books anymore. And he said that on the day that his Alzheimer's will advance to the point that he will not be able to create new books anymore, that is the day that he will want to just die. And I feel like people should be able to have that. I feel like once the thing that makes you alive ceases to be, once you completely lose any purpose, I'm not sure if it's worth prolonging just for the sake of prolonging. But then again, it gets complicated because sometimes people think in the moment that they want to not live, right? People think they want to die in the moment, but then realize sometime later that it was just them in the moment thinking that. So it gets a little bit complicated because of that. You know? My God, we should let how many episodes does it take to finally consider it's legit and not only in your head? Depends. I think it's a case-to-case thing. I really do. I don't know. Can you try to give me a word? I think it's a word that I probably don't know. There's a probability that it's just a word that I don't know. Oh my God. This guy. You know? Yeah, it's not a letter. The rules are yellow means it's in the wrong order. Green is okay. And black is you cannot use it. So R is also out. We cannot use R, so lesser is off the table. It's not as easy as you think. It's not as simple as you may think. This little game. Let's see what Food Shops is up to. The person that has more viewers than me. Really? This has 31 people watching. This has 31 people watching. Nothing's happening. What the hell? Letter also has R. R is off the table. We cannot use R. We cannot use R. Yeah, true, but I'm still annoyed. Listen, I think I deserve to have the biggest audience of them all, considering my achievements in being... At least you're stronger than you think you're stronger than me. Even I don't think I'm strong. I'm pretty weak, all things considered. Oh, Professor. Let's see if Lonerbox is doing better with his wordly thing. Oh, he gave up on wordly. I don't think I'm strong. I think I'm weak. Worst ending ever, says my favorite. This is my new favorite creator, by the way. This guy is my new favorite creator because he bashes Final Fantasy Remake so much. I like him for that. And he likes Expedition. Look, why it's so hard to stop playing Expedition 33.
You know how, like, when you guys finished the game, you just didn't want to stop playing? You're like, no, surely maybe there's a Picto under this rock or something. There's got to be something. I can't stop playing.
You have a shot. You've heard it before. What do you think I'm going to say to that? Read my mind. You're gonna say you're right, and you are weak, and not very strong. What? No. Well, that is my... You told me to tell you what I think. You asked me. Look at this. FF7 Rebirth ruined the Chocobo Sage in way...
Does anyone remember the Chocobo Sage? In the OG FF7, you have this weird NPC who you find by accident, and you don't even know...
You didn't say that, but that's what I think you will say now.
What he is, but he has the secrets to Chocobo breeding, which is how you unlock the best magic in the game. Now, what is that? Who are you? Me? I don't know. First of all, what is this thing? Like, really look at it, right? He looks like he's half black mage, half something else. He almost looks like he's covered in purple hair. Is that a tail? Like, what is this thing? Seriously. He's a strange little enigmatic classic Final Fantasy Easter egg-like creature who happens to be sitting around in FF7. Do you want to see how Rebirth improved him?
It did not improve him. Spoilers. Spoilers, Rebirth did not improve him.
And gentlemen, get ready for the Chocobo Sage.
This is the home of the Chocobo Sage, a living legend. Surely you've heard of the man.
Did someone say a living legend?
Oh my god! Look at him! Even he's sick of it! Even he can't believe this!
Okay, sir?
I am now. Thought I was a goner.
That is so shit!
Mind telling me who you are? I don't get many visitors out here in the boonies.
This is some Mickey Mouse bullshit!
Oh, speaking of Mickey Mouse bullshit. The idea in question, I will say, it's not about how often you fail. It's about how often you stand back up, and you've stood up again and again. Me? Maybe. Look at this. FF7 Rebirth ruined Red 13 in a way you'll never expect.
How annoyed was I the first time I heard?
Because Red 13 in the original is this, like, I don't know, feline, dog, tiger, lion-like. He's young, but he's mature, sort of, in the original FF7. But in the Rebirth, it turns out that let's just watch.
How annoyed was I the first time I heard Red 13's real voice? It is dog shit. It's atrocious. Let me tell you what you're missing out on. What you're about to see is not a mod, it's not a troll. They actually did this.
I appreciate all that you've done for me. Thank you.
We're really gonna miss you, Red.
Oh, don't say that. You're only making this harder. I mean, I wish we had more time, but this is my duty.
It is a travesty. The character assassination of the century, what they have done with Red 13. And he then makes every cutscene he's in impossible to take seriously. And since this is the most padded...
Yes, they decided that he actually did a pretend voice and actually...
It's atrocious. Let me tell you what you're missing out on. What you're about to see is not a mod, it's not a troll.
What the hell?
They actually did this.
I appreciate all that you've done for me. Thank you.
We're really
Yeah, this is a pretend voice.
gonna miss you, Red.
But he wanted to sound mature.
Oh, don't say that. You're only making this harder. I mean, I wish we had more time, but...
This is so horrible. Jesus Christ almighty. Why did they do this? Why did they do this to me? Why? Why? David Pacman destroys Timple's fake left-wing act with his own tweets. I didn't even know that Timple had a fake left-wing whatever thing. I didn't think that was a thing. Chatting with Destiny over how damn Jay's stock looks.
Here, I'll open it. I'll read it. Just open it on stream. Okay. The July 4th stream has really opened my eyes to my misconceptions. Misconspections? That was misspelled. About who Gisticle is. I don't have a disc.
What the hell? We've suffered. I wanna see something. Russian monitor or whatever. Russian media monitor. Let's see what they're saying. Vladimir Slavov warns Trump against dictating to Putin. Russian state TV discusses the upcoming Alaska summit. Oh boy, I cannot wait. Okay, let's watch it. I'm curious. I stood up again and again in the face of hardship. No, I don't think so. I don't think so, my dears. What's it here? Ah, TLDR. 274 viewers by Jesus, that was such a horrible thing. Ooh. Claire Obscure. What is this? What are you giving me to watch? What are you giving me?
Push me down, you heathen!
Don't tell me you've given me this. Is this what you've sent me? Cannot be.
Push me down, you heathen! Vader, are we good? Is this a bit you're doing? Vader!
Are we good? Is this a bet you're doing?
In peace, may you rest. That is this. No, Dead you are! Yoda, you old sponge. You look terrible. Dead? I am. Okay. I know. Dead? I would like you to be as well. I can't die, Yoda. Why not? Come closer. Death is a concept invented by the Jedi. What? I don't even know how to spell it. No, I know. Look, I was kidding. Just let me lie here for a moment. I will use the Force to heal my broken body. Take a while, that will. You be quiet. Whoa. That was a lot of hard work. A chair. It's perfectly sized for my little body. I'm just going to take a little nap. Oh no.
Oh my god. That was horrible. New recommendations. What the hell happened here? Oh, Riley Grace Rochon. 43 views. Oh my goodness. No way.
We think Republicans will do so. We'll do it unanimously.
No way.
We'll do it
Jose. This is not good. Bloody diplomacy. Well, hold on. Let's guess the word. Let's try to guess the word. Oh, no, let's watch the one video of the... Oh, 10 minutes. I want to go to the... The White House is calling on Ukraine to be pragmatic. Hold on, I'm gonna go back to the toilet and then I'm gonna be back and then it's gonna be... Oh, great. Okay, it's gonna be amazing. I'm gonna do it in my special accent. I'm gonna be right back, okay? Yeah? Yeah. I'm gonna be back. Also, tell me what you wanna tell me. I'm gonna go to the toilet. I'm gonna toilet myself. I don't have a refreshener, so I haven't used it. Oj, Busiu! No chodź do mnie, chodź, Busiu. Oj. Ojej, Busiu! Let me watch the monitor. I'm gonna read it out in an Eastern European.
К прагматизму, как пишет издание «Политико», Вашингтон в преддверии саммита просит Киев реалистично и адекватно оценить обстановку на фронте, имея в виду военную мощь противника. До встречи Путина и Трампа.
I should read it all aloud. As Politico is writing in the run-up to the summit, Washington is asking Kiev to assess the situation on the front in terms of their opponent's military might.
Военную мощь противника. До
Противника.
встречи Путина и
They're only
Трампа
2 days away
остается
from the
всего
meeting between Putin and Trump.
2 дня.
I'm going to meet with President Putin.
Moskva. What weird choice of sound, music. What a weird choice of sound.
I expect to have a meeting with Putin. I think it'll be good.
Появилась первая
We
информация
just received new information
провождать Путина на
about who will accompany Putin in Alaska.
Аляске. России подтвердил, что в
Russia's Foreign Affairs Ministry confirmed.
переговорах примет участие министр Лавров. О составе
Mr. Lavrov will be there. There is still no information about the US
делегации
delegation.
США информации по-прежнему нет. Спикер МИД России Фадеев сегодня прокомментировал
Russian Foreign Ministry's deputy spokesman Fadev. Fadey has commented about many speculations
многочисленные спекуляции насчет так
about the so-called exchange of territories.
называемого
Or even Russia
обмена
calls it the so-called exchange of territories. Even Russia knows that it's. Even Russian pundits know that it's bullshit.
территориями. Цитата.
Russia's territorial structure
Территориальное устройство России
is
закреплено
enshrined in the constitution of our country. Yeah, because this is such nonsense. Yeah, territorial integrity of the land that we stole via invasion.
в Конституции нашей страны. Ну, то есть
Therefore, Moscow will certainly not withdraw its troops
выводить войска из Херсонской и Запорожской
from
областей.
occupied territories of a different country. Brilliant, because our constitution says whatever we conquer is ours forever, I guess.
Такие вбросы были в ряде западных СМИ. Москва, конечно, не станет.
As some Western media has claimed.
С критикой на либеральную
In the run-up to the meeting,
прессу в преддверии встречи обрушился
Donald Trump harshly criticized the liberal press.
Дональд Трамп.
What a
По его
shock.
словам, недобросовестные продажи
Very unfair media is at work on my meeting with Putin, constantly quoting fired losers and really dumb people like John Bolton, who just said that even though the meeting is on American soil, Putin has already won. What's that all about? We are winning on everything. We are winning on everything. The fake news is working overtime. No tax on overtime. If I got Moscow and Leningrad free as part of the deal with Russia, good luck. The fake news would say that I made a bad deal, but now they've been caught. Look at all the real news that's coming out about their corruption. They're sick and dishonest people who probably hate our country. But it doesn't matter because we are winning on everything. MAGA! Yeah, okay. I really wonder how this will age after the summit. I wonder if Trump's gonna get Moscow and Leningrad for free. Is Russia still calling the special military operation? Yes. Russia's still calling it that.
Важные журналисты. Больные, как он сказал, и нечестные
Thick and unfair people, as he put it.
будут ругать его,
Would you be bashing him even if you would get
если он бесплатно получит в рамках
Leningrad and Moscow?
сделки Ленинград и Москву.
This is so
Именно
insane.
так. Ленинград.
Leningrad.
Президент США назвал Санкт-Петербург в своей соцсети Truth Social. Пресс-секретарь Трампа Caroline Leavitt отвечает
Chime in from a distance.
принимать Путина в США
It's an honor for the US president to host Putin in the US.
честь для американского президента.
What?
Издание
What the hell was this translation? What the hell was that? What the fuck? What is this amateur hour production value? What the hell? What was that all about? What was that all about? What was this transition? Axios asserts that during a phone conversation,
Donald
Trump told European leaders,
телефонной беседы, сказал европейским
including
лидерам
Zelensky,
и Зеленскому в том числе, что им придется
that they will have to accept
признать утрату территорий
the loss
на
of territory by Ukraine.
Украине. Но эти
According
территории,
to the Russian constitution,
согласно российской
we
конституции,
don't consider these territories as part of Ukraine. Wait, what? What the fuck? What do you mean, according to the Russian constitution, you don't consider these territories as part of Ukraine? I have no clue what that means. Like what? Does the Russian constitution say whatever is Ukrainian is Russian?
и вовсе Украиной никак не считаем. Прошу.
Also, what the fuck is happening here?
Ну, как мы видим,
Well,
как
as
мы
we
знаем,
see and as we know,
весь мир
the
живет
whole world lives in anticipation
ожиданием пятницы на Аляске.
of the Alaska meeting.
Я вообще со студенческих
From my
времен
student years, I know
знаю, что пятница гораздо лучше
that
понедельника.
Friday is much better than Monday. Wow. Okay. Thank you. Brilliant. Such brilliant words. For me, of course, it is a real pleasure.
Конечно, очень приятно то,
For me, what a pleasure it is for me, of course,
что факт выбора Аляски местом
that
встречи
choosing Alaska as a meeting place
пробудил исторические
has reawakened historic memories.
воспоминания.
What historic memories? What are you talking about? Of
Конечно,
course, I think everyone understood for a long time. Understood what?
я думаю, все уже давно понимают, не только Любе,
Not only the rock band Lyube,
что мы зря
that we
поторопились.
shouldn't have hastily sold Alaska for $7.2 million. Well, you have, and now it's gone. So
Продать
it
Аляску
awakened my historical memories. The fuck?
за 7 миллионов 200 тысяч
In the
долларов
19th century.
в 19
You must
веке.
be pretty old if you have those memories. But now, perhaps for the first time,
Но вот теперь мы, может быть, в первый раз извлекаем из
we
этого
benefit from that.
пользу. Потому что
Because
факт
the fact of conducting it in Alaska,
проведения на Аляске, это всем очевидно,
which is
это
obvious and everyone commented on it,
уже всеми откомментировано, означает,
means in the first place, like according to Russian constitution, I guess it's also Russian soil.
ну, во-первых, означает, что как не ужасно
However terrible this discovery may be,
это открытие кое для кого в
for some in Europe and even in America,
Европе и даже в Америке, Владимир Путин
Vladimir Putin is able to enter the United States.
является въездным в Соединенные Штаты. Мне это тоже
It's
приятно
a pleasure for me to note this.
отметить.
Oh boy. I mean, Yeah, that is de facto what's happening under
Как
Trump.
любому другому депутату Государственной Думы, который давно уже не въездной.
That has been barred for a long time. Yeah, it does definitely break the isolation that has been more or less a thing till Trump got into office.
В европейские страны,
From traveling to the European countries, the US,
в США, в Австралию, в Канаду,
Australia, Canada,
Новую
New Zealand,
Зеландию и
and
так далее.
so on.
Видимо, что-то меняется.
Apparently, something is changing.
Во-вторых,
Secondly, this is isolation that they were so proud of
то есть вот эта вот изоляция, которая так
for all these years,
гордились и так кичились все эти годы, она на этом
was obviously shattered through this.
дает явную трещину, по крайней мере, когда дело
At least where it has to do with international relations.
касается межгосударственных отношений. Во-вторых, это
Secondly, this also means
означает, что Трамп тоже
that Trump will have to pay a respective visit to Russia.
должен будет совершить свой визит ответный в Россию. Когда это
When will it happen?
произойдет, известно, что
You know that an invitation was sent.
приглашение такое направлено. Мы хотим говорить
We want to speak one-on-one,
один на один. И, как уже
as
все
everyone already noted.
отметили, господин Зеленский вряд ли
Zelensky will unlikely be able to fly
долетит не только до середины
not
Днепра,
only to the middle of the Dnipro River,
но и до
but certainly not to Alaska, the middle of
Аляски, совершенно точно. Насчет середины Днепра, может быть, и долетит, но до Аляски...
but unlikely to Alaska.
Что, мне кажется, важно
What I think is important to note
отметить вот в преддверии
in the run-up to this visit,
этого визита, что является сегодня темой
which is currently the topic of much gossip, or analysis, speculation, and gossip is one way to put it.
бесконечных пересудов, гадания на кофейной гуще
They're reading the tea leaves, etc.
и так далее. Это вот что будет с
What will
территорией,
happen to the territories?
что в результате,
If
если
some kind
будет
of an agreement is reached,
достигнута какая-то договоренность, останется Украине, что будет
what will Ukraine get to keep?
За Россией и так далее. Я убежден
I'm completely convinced
совершенно точно в том, что все, что на
that
сегодняшний
everywhere the Russian soldiers set his foot,
день, там, где ступила нога русского солдата, все
will unquestionably be kept by Russia.
безусловно будет сохранено от России. Я
That is fucked up.
уверен, что это
I'm sure that this is the red line. That is the fucked up red line, and it should not be acceptable by anyone.
та самая, хоть договорились красных линий не
Although we've agreed not to draw red lines,
красная линия, которая в
this
данном
is our red line, even there are no red... Okay, that makes perfect sense to me. There are no red lines, but this is the red line. Okay. Of course.
случае существует для нас.
Что можно очевидно, да, сказать, что
What can obviously be said?
встреча, она будет исторической, и Белый дом
This will be a historic meeting, and everything is a historic meeting, everything is a historic discussion, everything is historic. Everything is so cool and monumental and important.
Дом сегодня сделал очень важное уточнение.
The White House made an important clarification.
Встреча не про Украину, сказал.
The White House said this meeting is not about Ukraine. Oh. Wait, what is it? Wait, what?
Белый дом. Украина один и
Ukraine is one of the issues.
Из вопроса все намного глобальнее.
Everything is a lot more global.
Исходя из этой логики,
Based on this logic, we can surmise
можно сделать вывод, что и
that
в
positive
рамках
changes are possible.
наших двухсторонних отношений возможны позитивные изменения, и в
Is this not even about Ukraine? Oh, yeah, oh, you don't watch the debate anymore. Yeah, the debate ended. I'm not watching it anymore because it ended. Now I'm watching the Russian media because that's where it's at, okay? The Russian media, that is where it's at. That's where you get the best content. Brilliant. The summit is not even going to be about Ukraine. It's just going to be one of the many issues.
в экономических вопросах возможны позитивные изменения. А
As for Ukraine, what about Ukraine? What the... Okay, brilliant.
Украина, ну а что Украина? Сегодня
They have those propaganda puppets. Yeah, I can explain. Yeah. I know what you mean. Don't worry. You don't have to explain. I know perfectly what you mean. Jesus Christ.
сегодня есть, завтра может
Today it exists, tomorrow it may not exist.
не быть ни в повестке, ни,
Either on the agenda or on the map.
ни на карте. Всякое бывает.
Stuff happens.
Хорошо.
Go ahead.
То, что сейчас происходит в контексте...
What is currently happening in the context?
российско-украинских, российско-американских
Of the Russian-Ukrainian and Russian-American relations.
отношений, это как раз-таки выход на этот новый уровень.
Yeah, propaganda faces, yeah. Yeah. Talking heads.
В связи с тем, насколько
It's a shift to a new level.
много различных
Because so many different events are taking place.
событий происходит. И этим моментом,
We should
безусловно,
certainly take advantage of this moment.
надо воспользоваться. Это своеобразное окно Эвертона,
It's a kind of an Overton window that is opening.
которое открывается и которое в любой момент
And
может
can slam shut any moment.
захлопнуться. К предстоящим переговорам
Russia
в
is coming into negotiations in Alaska
Аляске Россия подходит
in a very strong position.
действительно очень сильными позициями. И в этой
In this regard,
связи, конечно, Дональд Трамп, он не
Donald Trump started this diplomatic offensive
просто так пошел вот в это дипломатическое наступление,
for a good reason.
поскольку
Taking is a very good Polish short film. Yeah? You know what Polish film you should watch? The manuscript found in Saragossa, based on a very good book. And also the sanatorium under the sandglass. Sanatorium pod Klepsydro. You should watch these movies. Classic movies.
ему важно получить результат в условиях очень жесткой политической
In conditions of a tough political struggle.
борьбы. Он действительно торопится.
Is really in a rush.
Но торопятся как раз-таки потому, что
he is rushing. If you watch the manuscripts znaleziony w Saragoście, then you should read the book as well. The book is actually far superior.
что произошло обострение
Because many serious conflicts have worsened
очень многих серьезных конфликтов между ним и
between him and the Democratic Party.
партии демократов, особенно
No,
вокруг
that's around issues involving migrants.
повестки, связанные с мигрантами, и как раз
He
таки
needs to have some foreign policy successes.
ему нужны какие-то
Yeah, giving Russia all that it wants is not a foreign policy success. So, not really a success.
внешние политические успехи, поэтому он готов
This is why he is ready to conduct these negotiations
проводить эти переговоры у себя
at home, at their military base.
на военной базе. И,
The weakness of the position of the United States
собственно, слабость позиции Соединенных Штатов, она компенсируется
is
тем,
being compensated by them being at home.
что они у себя дома, и
I didn't watch it yet because I actually wanted to read the book, which happens to be originally in French, so I want to read it in French, but first I need to level it up. Yeah, I see the problem. It's a good book though.
дома и стены помогают в том, что касается
With respect to reaching agreement.
договариваться. Вот дипломаты встречаются,
Diplomats meet and discuss things.
обсуждают. Это, как правило,
Usually these are professionals.
профессионалы, что бы ни говорила
Regardless of
Фиона
what
Хилл
Fiona Hill says,
и другие сбитые
or
летчики,
any other pilots who have been shot down
которых больше не подпускают к
and are no
дипломатическому
longer
процессу.
allowed to participate in the political
У
process.
Трампа действительно будут
Trump will certainly have professionals
профессионалы, которые нашу страну знают досконально.
who know our country very truly. Yeah, like Witkoff. Witkoff is one such professional who knows Russia very well. Oh, yeah. I know these.
Они договариваются на
They are making agreements on an international level.
международном уровне, находят блестящее соглашение.
They reach brilliant deals. Yeah, brilliant deals.
Для того,
Witkoff
чтобы
is.
это соглашение было
But in order for this deal to be
реализовано,
realized,
необходимо, чтобы
society has to
общество
agree with it.
с этим согласилось. И в конце
At
концов,
long last, they have ripened by now.
они сейчас созрели. Поэтому этим моментом,
We should certainly take advantage of this moment.
безусловно, надо воспользоваться.
Advantage.
И воспользоваться этим моментом позволяет нам не просто
To set a new formula of Euro-Asian security,
заложить новую формулу евразийской безопасности, но еще и,
but
наконец,
also to finally focus on other directions,
переключиться на другие
like the Baltics
направления
and
внешней
Lithuania,
политики.
of foreign policy.
Действительно,
Since a lot of our efforts really went
очень много сил уходило на
towards dealing with issues connected to Ukraine.
решение вопросов, связанных с Украиной.
Issues.
И это
What this will lead to is that Russia's positions
приведет к тому, что позиции России будут усиливаться не
will
только
strengthen not only with respect to Ukraine.
в том, что касается Украины.
What does that mean?
Это будет касаться и ситуации на Ближнем
But with respect to the situation in the Middle East,
Востоке, и в Большой Евразии, и
Greater Russia, Africa, and Latin
в
America.
Африке, и Латинской Америке, и, в принципе, практически
Basically on every azimuth.
по всем азимутам.
Дональд Трамп заявил, будет
Donald Trump said whatever will happen, will happen. Well,
как будет с точки
that's reassuring. Whatever will happen, happen.
зрения дипломатии.
Is it possible from a standpoint of diplomacy?
Возможно, он сообщает, что нет никаких прикидок
He says there are no workups for the future deal.
по поводу будущей сделки. Сядем,
We'll
посмотрим
sit down, look each other in the eyes, and decide.
друг другу в глаза и решим. Это
This
лукавство.
is not deception. Everything has been decided, right?
Все
What?
решили, да?
Безусловно, лукавство,
It's certainly deception.
но одновременно с этим нужно
At the same time, we should understand
понимать, что в дипломатии очень
that in
важна
diplomacy,
химия между переговаривающимся
chemistry between the parties is very important.
Со сторонами. Безусловно, есть определенные накидки.
There definitely are certain workups, certain sketches
Наброски, которые были сделаны его командой
that
перед
were done by his team
этими переговорами.
prior to these
Но
negotiations.
дальше
But later, behind closed doors,
за закрытыми дверями действительно происходит
the magic of diplomacy takes place.
дипломатии. То есть действительно
Yeah, like the magic of diplomacy that Trump has shown us this far throughout all of his talks with Putin.
в моменте они
In that moment, they can agree to shake hands,
могут договориться, ударить по рукам, и дальше уже
and after that, it can't be undone. What do you mean? Yes, it can.
будет не отыграть. И
The Ukrainians and Europeans will have to accept.
украинцам, европейцам придется признать.
Is there a Russian news channel that isn't state-owned and does somewhat reliable news? Obviously, they would have to have a station outside of Russia. I don't know. You have a Belarusian one, but you probably know of Bielsat already, right? I think they do general Eastern European stuff. But I haven't heard of a Russian equivalent of Bielsat. The Ukrainians and the Europeans will have to accept
чем договорятся Трамп и Путин.
that Trump and Putin agree on. Alright. That's it. I guess we're gonna finish my glorious stream for now. Thank you all. We've watched an amazing debate. We streamed for 3 hours and 20 minutes, which is a long time. I'm gonna rest, I'm gonna regenerate over the weekend, and I'm gonna give you the best things on Monday. Maybe we'll stream some gaming over the weekend, who knows. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be the best thing. Thank you. I'm gonna raid you to somebody who was worthy. I'm gonna raid you to Lactoid, your new favorite content creator. Okay, I'm gonna raid you to Lactoid. Because we all love him, and he's totally not a dishonest piece of crap. Mercado Gaming, there you go. Alright. Thank you. Bye bye.